fastest countdown? All right, we are live, guys. Sorry for the delay there. Had an issue with the stream going to the wrong link, but we are ready for a 9-game Saturday deeper dive where, holy cow, are we going to have a lot to figure out over the course of the next 57 minutes. But I'm Chris Spags, joined by a man who I'm excited to go on this maiden voyage. Really, the Lewis and Clark of the depleted Milwaukee Bucks roster is what we're going to be today. But it's Greg Ehrenberg. How you doing, Greg?
Yeah, I like how you said that we were ready at the start. Like, are we? I mean, there's this Bucks team who, by the way, also, so, I mean, when we do the deep dive, we go game by game. Almost all of these games are relevant now. Basically, I mean, the whole context of the slate is you save a bunch of money with Bucks guys, you pay up for whatever stars end up being active on the slate. That's how you go about building your lineups. That's the entire gist of this slate.
If you guys missed the news about 15 minutes before the show, maybe 20 minutes, I got news that Chris Middleton out, Giannis Antetokounmpo doubtful, Drew Holiday also doubtful, Dante DiVincenzo also doubtful, and it does seem like the Bucks will have enough guys to play this game, but many of them are going to be names that you haven't heard before. We're going to get to that game coming up in a bit, and as Greg mentioned, these guys are going to be crucial today as your value plays on the slate, but most important thing we have to hit on first off, a site where maybe these guys won't be relevant at all, and maybe a breather for you if you play on SuperDraft today. Our presenting sponsor helps us put on all the weekend shows here on the Awesemo channel. And today they're here for you guys, really transforming the DFS industry every day thanks to their partnership with Caesars Rewards, where they want to be part of the big three. So they have gigantic tournaments, lots of overlay recently on SuperDraft, and also the rewards points from Caesars that you can use at any hotels or casinos, really a bunch of different places that are in the Caesars network. So go check that out at superdraft.io. Go over there today. There's a 20K jump shot, 4K going to first place. And again, lots of overlay on there, especially I think on nights like this one that air a little more on the side of chaotic. So go to superdraft.io, download SuperDraft the App Store, use the promo code Awesemo21 when you sign up because they'll deposit match you up to $50. So go to superdraft.io and use that promo code Awesemo21 to get your $50 free. And one more quick promo here because we're going to have to get right to the games here and talk. Greg's going to have to talk as fast as I do today, so more power to him. Going to have a fun time with that. But we got the promo code starting 9 for you guys. It's MLB starting up on April 1st, the opening day special here with all the content coming up on this channel. We have a deal for you. Get your first 9 days of Awesemo Plus MLB for only $9 when you use the promo code starting 9. That's starting with the numeral 9. Gives you access to everything we have for MLB DFS, including player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, a lineup builder, our premium Slack channel, and more. The offer is valid through April 9th, so get in there. Use that promo code starting 9 at awesemo.com/join. And Greg, let's just get going game by game here because we do have the 9 games and we're going to try to make good time on some of the less relevant games. And this one, Greg, I think value-wise, maybe a less relevant one to hit on up top. Houston at Minnesota, game with a 229 combined total that doesn't look bad. So maybe some tournament plays in this one. On Houston's side, we are going to have Kevin Porter Jr. expected back. Ben McLemore looked like he'd be a chalk play today with no Daniel House. That seems like that's going to drop him down a little bit, though, having Porter Jr. in projected to play 23 minutes from Awesemo. And Greg, on this spot for Houston, I honestly don't see anybody I want to play now. Kevin Porter Jr. being in squeezes things enough for me that I don't think you need to get to McLemore, especially with that Milwaukee value. Overall, I think you could play John Wall. You could play Christian Wood with all the money you're going to have to go around today. But on Houston's side, I don't see much that I'd want to build around as a core play.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I like John Wall a lot earlier in the day, but now, I mean, it looks like there's going to be so much value available to us that I don't really think that we need to get to John Wall when, I mean, we have to see what happens with guys like Bradley Beal and Luka Doncic, but if Luka's in, then there's going to be all the salary in the world to just go from John Wall up to Luka. Russell Westbrook, if Bradley Beal isn't in, he's going to be somebody who's easy to get to as opposed to John Wall. I mean, if you're going to plug in $3 or $4 value plays, which you probably should be doing in every lineup, you have unlimited value. You have unlimited salary to spend elsewhere. So you're just paying up everywhere else. And John Wall, I don't think it makes sense to go all the way up to him. Christian Wood at 7,700 on FanDuel. I think that is an appealing price point to get to. Other guys on the slate, just really a no-go for me. You brought up Ben McLemore. He did look like he would potentially be a chalk play earlier in the day, but now I assume that Kevin Porter Jr. is going to start. McLemore is going to come off the bench and probably play a limited role. The other thing to consider also, Kelly Olynyk is questionable to play and make his Houston Rockets debut. Avery Bradley is questionable to play and make his Houston Rockets debut. If these guys are going to be in the lineup, that's going to pinch some of these other cheaper Rockets guys who are also nowhere near the value plays that the Bucks plays are. Like that's the context we look at every single value play on this slate is this min price guy expect to score 30 fantasy points? No, then I'm rostering a Bucks guy instead, which is everybody who isn't on Milwaukee.
Is one thing that could change things for you. And I think this is something that we saw, which surprises me based on what we've seen, in past years with NBA trade deadlines, but guys like Gary Trent starting, guys like Norman Powell picking up meaningful minutes and starting. Do you think there's any chance here that could be the case for a guy like Olynyk, who, could sort of fill in the stretch four role for these guys and maybe be a play that opens things up? I guess that's the one thing that I would point out here with Olynyk being 3,500 on DraftKings and not too expensive on FanDuel either. I think that's the one way it gets viable is if I saw Olynyk starting. But do you think there's any chance that happens, Greg?
I think Kevin Porter Jr. is going to start. So I think it's going to be John Wall, Kevin Porter Jr., Sterling Brown, Jay Sean Tate, and Christian Wood. Maybe Olynyk starts. And yeah, I agree with you. If he does, then at 3,500, that's an appealing price point. But I think he's more likely to either not play or not start. Like, I think starting is a pretty low probability outcome.
Yeah, so I think that's one to watch here, and this is one of the earlier games on the slate. That's why we're starting with it here in our marathon here on the deeper dive. But just one news item I think is worth keeping an eye on, because Olynyk, to me, a dude that could fill in a lot of opportunity here, can assist a little better, and maybe Tate takes a bench role. I think wouldn't be the worst thing for him, given how he really hasn't been the most effective player with all the court time he's had. On Minnesota side, though, Greg, we do have Malik Beasley coming back into the lineup. Karl Anthony Towns, to me, I think still looks good, but because of Beasley being in, adding his 32-minute projection from Awesemo today into the rotation with the rest of these guys, I think it caps Edwards' ceiling a bit. Edwards still could certainly get ball happy, trigger happy as he does sometimes as a gunner of a guard out there. But for the most part, no pun intended, by the way, with Beasley. That's my bad. But Edwards too, as much of a gunner as Beasley is in real life. I would say though, for me, it's just Towns or bust on Minnesota side. But is there anybody that you like more here? Do you think Beasley is interesting coming in? I think on FanDuel it might be a bit different play though. That is not accounting for the Bucks news.
Yeah, so 5,700 for Beasley on FanDuel. As long as number one, he starts, and number two, doesn't have any kind of restrictions. Like we said, he's not coming off COVID. He's not coming off injury. He's coming off of reckless gun charges from 6 months ago that led to him getting suspended for, I think it was like 10 games or something like that. But as long as his conditioning is up to par, and as long as he's starting, I think that Malik Beasley, at least at 5,700 on FanDuel, that's an appealing price point to get to. Karl Anthony Towns is one of my favorite pay-up options right now. FanDuel and DraftKings, even though he's sub 10K, I have him projected just as well as really the other viable pay-up options we have on the slate when we consider that Luka's right now questionable, Giannis has been ruled out. We have all this value and kind of a lack of guys to pay up for right now. So Karl Anthony Towns is going to be a priority spend-up option for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think too, especially on a slate where there's probably gonna be a good percentage of people rostering one of the Bucks center plays. I think Mamadi Diakite, a guy that Greg and I were debating the pronunciation of his name earlier in the show, is going to emerge as a value play according to a lot of projection systems out there. So I think on a slate where a lot of people are going to be taking maybe some superfluous plays, some plays that aren't the highest upside guys, just because that's sort of the nature of a median projection when the Bucks are going to have so few of their star players available, really none of their star players available. I think Towns, I'm with you, I think is one of the better pay-up options. Especially if we don't see Luka get in tonight, which he is questionable right now. Anything else from this game, Greg, or do you want to move on? Because we got to keep a fairly brisk pace.
No, we can move on.
All right, next game up here, and smash the like button, guys. Here, you guys have EMac and Terry coming up after us for Live Before Lock. So if things get any crazier, they'll be here to help keep you sane and give you any breaking news that comes up. But help us get the likes up here. It's a Saturday. We're here with you guys here, trying to do the same thing of making sense of a crazy and shockingly large Saturday slate. So hit that like button here, help us out, and of course subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell as well, because we have content all around the clock, and it's only going to get crazier with MLB. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel and hit that notification bell as well. The next game up, the one that we have to get into, I guess, right away, New York and Milwaukee. This game earlier had a 223 combined total. I think maybe Greg will have more insight on the line movements here, because I didn't get a chance to fully account for that with just making sure to track everybody's minutes and see who's going to be playing today. But on the Knicks side, Greg, we have players available, I guess, who should have a better matchup than they might normally against Milwaukee. Maybe a little bit slower paced, I guess, something to keep in mind, because you're just not going to see the ball pushed quite as effectively, quite as efficiently without Giannis, without Drew Holiday out there. But I think for New York, Greg, I don't see anybody I love. Derrick Rose coming in for even 11 minutes, I think, isn't the best thing for the overall economy. You have Randall in, you have Barrett in, you do have Nerlens Noel expected or potentially not playing. So I guess that could be.
Randall was downgraded to questionable at the same time as well. But the entire Knicks roster is questionable right now also. Randall is questionable, Rose is questionable, Bullock is questionable, and Nerlens Noel is questionable.
So basically, all right, so how are we handling this game then? I missed that news alert amidst all the Milwaukee parts, but I guess the Knicks may be taking some disrespect from Milwaukee, not even wanting to roster a team there. But how are you handling it right now? Or is this just one where you have no idea how it's going to look until you know who's in and who's out?
Yeah, so if Randall's, by the way, the line currently sits at, this almost seems odd to me. The Knicks are 1.5 point favorites. If Randall ends up playing, like that line seems like it should be way wider. Like the Bucks are playing nobody today. The total has dropped from 223.5 to 218. But yeah, the Knicks were 8.5 point underdogs as of 5:29 p.m. Eastern time. Then as of 5:31 p.m. Eastern time, the Knicks were 1.5 point favorites from 8.5 point underdogs. So pretty quick line move in a hurry from all the guys who were ruled out from the Bucks. But yeah, I don't know what to make of the Knicks right now because there's so many guys who are questionable. I guess like if we're going to see Bullock out and Rose out, maybe if Quickly starts, it's the game where they just give him a bunch of run because they're going to be playing against backups. If Randall's out, like Randall plays so many minutes for them, I don't even know what the starting lineup would look like. I think it's just something we need more information on, see which of these guys are in and what's the Knicks starting lineup going to be. Because, I mean, you can make a case if Randall is out and Derrick Rose that RJ Barrett could have to do everything for the Knicks. Maybe they start, like I said, Quickly. If maybe Obi Toppin ends up playing significant minutes. Like there's a whole lot of things. I just want to see what the starting lineup ends up looking like for the Knicks.
Yeah, I think the Obi Toppin one could be one that's interesting because he just hasn't been able to get any minutes for himself. He hasn't been particularly good by any stretch, but another guy at the minimum salary and power forward position on DraftKings that could be in the hunt today. But I agree with you. RJ Barrett to me would be the player that immediately takes a jump upwards if Randall is out. And alongside really whoever would be starting there, if you saw Burke start, if you saw Quickly start, there's going to be a lot of usage go around, a lot of assist upside, also some extra rebounds for everybody. But I think Mitchell Robinson maybe takes a jump. So this is one that's hard to talk about without knowing the full circumstance. On the other side, though, Greg, we seemingly know most of the circumstance from Milwaukee, where they're just going to be resting Chris Middleton already ruled out, and then the rest of the guys, the core guys for Milwaukee, with Giannis, with Drew Holiday, and with Dante DiVincenzo, those guys doubtful. And I think we were seeing some people in the chat questioning things, saying they'll put the cart ahead of the horse, or whatever the various statements you might want to say would be about Milwaukee. But Greg, the assumption here is these guys don't play, right? I don't think there's much of a chance here of them rushing them in on a back-to-back.
Yeah, I mean, in general, whenever everybody's listed as doubtful, I just assume they're not playing. Every once in a while, somebody who's listed as doubtful does play. Every once in a while, somebody who's listed as probable ends up being ruled out. But for the most part, it's safe to assume probable guys are in, doubtful guys are out. So, I mean, with that in mind, I am not expecting Dante DiVincenzo, Bobby Portis, PJ Tucker, Rodion Skirux, Drew Holiday, Giannis Antetokounmpo, or Chris Middleton to play for the Bucks. This creates the most value we've seen on any individual team for the entire season. And another one that I'd like to see a starting lineup for, there is a projected starting lineup that I think is probably somewhat accurate, though.
So I guess tell me about the projected starting lineup, then tell me what you're seeing here. And I guess it's worth pointing out because people in the chat are asking, Brook Lopez, the one guy not on the injury report, and it does seem like he'll be playing, though Awesemo only giving him 25 minutes today, I guess, on the assumption that Brook Lopez, if you have the rest of the starters out, I don't see why you'd play Brook Lopez for a bunch of minutes today.
Yeah, so one thing I think is weird is, so right now the Bucks have 9 players who we are assuming as active. One of them is Brook Lopez. The minimum you need to field an NBA team is 8. So it does seem weird to me that Brook Lopez wasn't included in the injury report. If he starts, then I guess he's the most reliable, at least fantasy player on the Bucks, not from a points per dollar perspective, just in terms of raw points. But if he comes off the bench, I'm going to assume that Brook Lopez isn't playing because there's no reason to have Brook Lopez come off the bench and play like 20 minutes. I think either of those scenarios are possible. Brook Lopez could start and play his normal minutes and soak up a ton of usage. He could end up coming off the bench and just kind of being an emergency piece for them in case somebody gets hurt. Right now, the projected starting lineup for the Bucks is Sam Merrill, Bryn Forbes, Pat Connaughton, Thanasis Antetokounmpo, and Brook Lopez.
Oh, so interesting. So Nwora not part of that expected starting group, which does seem to run a little counter to the rotation that Awesemo is projecting right now, with Nwora getting 35. I guess this is sort of the way we could talk about it, because this is where I'm pulling my projections from and what I'm building my own projections off of too, in addition to referencing Awesemo's projections. The minutes for these guys, he has Nwora getting 35, Sam Merrill getting 35, Pat Connaughton getting 35, Bryn Forbes getting 35, Diakite getting 27, Antetokounmpo, the other Antetokounmpo, Thanasis, getting 25, Brook Lopez 25, and Axel Tupain 25. You said 9 guys. Am I missing one? Because I think these are the only 8 that Awesemo had giving minutes to.
Miles Powell is a two-way player that I think is going to be active today. I'm not totally positive, but I expect that Miles Powell is going to be active.
Okay, so let's talk about these guys then, because I guess we have to look at it through 2 different lenses where, I'm going to try to focus more on the Awesemo projection because To me, if you give Jordan Nwora 35 minutes, he looks like the best play. Awesemo has him for 39 fantasy points. I would have him for 40.7. And Nwora is really the one guy this year, I guess, besides Diakite, who's been around 1 fantasy point per minute. Diakite at center has been about a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy, rebounding at about a 19% clip, kind of surprisingly high 15% assist rate for Diakite. And this is small sample size ball, so keep that in mind here. But I guess if you had to prioritize, Greg, out of these guys, I think it would be, for me, Nwora, Merrill, Connaughton, and Diakite would be the priorities. And I would get some Bryn Forbes because he's 3,100. But how are you viewing it here? And I think the starting group is definitely a big part that we really need to see an official starting lineup.
Yeah, so I feel a little bit differently than you. To me, Connaughton is going to be the priority. And here's the other thing also. It is going to be so difficult to reliably predict the minutes for the Bucks starters. I'm playing just for anybody in the rotation. For the Bucks, I'm going to prioritize who's starting for them. Guys coming off the bench are going to be lower priority GPP plays for me. I think that there's a good likelihood that 6 or 7 of these guys hit value. But this isn't even a game where I think that like 20 fantasy points from a min-price guy it's not as enticing of an outcome as it's going to be for most NBA slates. So I'm going to prioritize whoever is starting for them. Right now, like I said, I assume that's going to be Sam Merrill, Bryn Forbes, Pat Connaughton, Thanasis Antetokounmpo, and Brook Lopez. Since I'm a little wary of Brook Lopez's minutes until I find out for sure he's starting, right now my priority plays are Connaughton, Forbes, Merrill, and Antetokounmpo.
Interesting. So, okay. So you are team Connaughton. I think that does make sense given that we've seen him have, 40 fantasy point upside when, Giannis has been in, when Middleton's been in, when Holiday's been in, when really all the guys have been in. So I definitely get that. I guess to me though, so that's more of a small forward play. That's more of a guard / small forward play. But who do you think then gets the lion's share of power forward minutes? Because that's really the productive spot for both the starters and the bench when, you have Giannis doing Giannis things. And obviously that's not the case of Bobby Portis. But when Giannis is out, you have Bobby Portis doing sort of the Bobby Portis impression of Giannis and what he fills in this role. Is there a guy who you think fills that role then? Is it Thanasis who just kind of does the bootleg of the bootleg impression?
I'm not. So as long as he starts, I think that, if there is anybody who's going to be bootleg Giannis, it might as well be his brother. The thing about Thanasis, at least when he's been on the court, is, we've seen him at times be an okay fantasy producer. For the year, he's playing 8 minutes per game, averages 7 fantasy points. If we're going to say he starts and plays in the neighborhood of 30 minutes, and there's going to be all this usage to go around, we probably assume somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 to 30 fantasy points for Thanasis. So I think that nobody's going to fill the Giannis role, so I don't really like it phrased that way. But assuming Thanasis starts, I think he gets the bulk of the minutes. And then off the bench, I think it's going to be Diakite, Miles Powell, Jordan Nwora. I think all of these guys are going to play minutes, but it's hard for me to expect any of them plays, like 30 minutes off the bench, because there's too many guys that I can't see them really prioritizing any one bench guy over another bench guy. I think it's just going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, hey, the starters play 30 minutes and then the backup guys play somewhere around 20 or something like that.
Okay, so this is one I think you definitely got to watch, the Awesemo minutes projections and player projections, which of course you can always get for yourself at awesemo.com/join. But definitely a situation that the starting lineups are going to tell a pretty big story. And it looks like we actually got a minutes projection or a projections update overall 5 minutes ago. So let me just see if there was anything that moved around there just to make sure that we're being as complete as we can. And of course, always make sure to check the premium Slack too for news gods alerts about the news, whether it be about the starting lineup or any other, coach speak that might be out there. But let me just make sure I get these guys all.
By the way, while you're looking that up, something really funny is I just saw in the Slack chat people were debating is Sam Merrill a lock play tonight, which I thought was funny too because we were briefly talking about this before we started. So none of us were really that familiar with who Sam Merrill is, and we're just gonna have such strong opinions on him an hour from now or whatever, 2 hours from now when the slate starts, where everybody's gonna be like, Sam Merrill, best player in the league. Sam Merrill, worst NBA player ever. There's just gonna be these really crazy takes about a guy who. Let's see, how many minutes has he played this year? I guarantee it's not very many. Sam Merrill this year has appeared in 18 games, playing 6.5 minutes per game. So, we're looking at a guy who's played right around 100 minutes for the entire season. And whatever he does tonight is going to be what DFS players think of him forever.
Yeah, and I hope he does well. I mean, for whatever it's worth, if you are a believer in Sam Merrill or somebody, I guess, who's been intrigued by him. I know I've been playing more NBA 2K recently, and for some reason, when people play the Bucks, they always get Sam Merrill in the rotation. So I don't know if there's some weird Sam Merrill buzz out there, but 72% true shooting on the year for him. I think that does stand out pretty well to me. It's certainly one that, as Greg mentioned, such a small sample size, probably going to regress. And I gotta put in my word for Jordan Nwora after I just mentioned that he might play some minutes, and people took that as me advocating for him. Today is a day where I would advocate for him a little bit. Still in for 35 minutes from Awesemo in this most recent round of projections, and I think Jordan Nwora is a guy they did invest draft capital in. So in this spot, I think that it could be he's somebody I think they want to see more of. On Connaughton, I agree with Greg, probably the safest play. And I guess if we were ranking them for cash games, Greg, is it pretty much Connaughton would be the one that you'd want the most? Because I think the 3K guys in cash may be a bit different than in tournaments.
So for right now, it would be it's four guys that I really want in cash. It's Connaughton, Bryn Forbes, Sam Merrill, and Thanasis Antetokounmpo, assuming that those are the starters alongside Brook Lopez. Number one, Bryn Forbes, to me, in terms of cheap plays, considering he's somebody who's already a part of the rotation normally, I just think that has to mean that he's going to get more minutes than other guys. Like, he's already somebody who's a part of that rotation, unless this thing where also they just go totally wonky and don't start anybody who's a normal part of the rotation. They just go with an all G League team. By the way, also, I think something that's of note is that Alex did post a box score of a Bucks game from last year where they did something similar and rested everybody. They ended up with 9 active players, and the starters, other than Thanasis, only played 20 minutes, but the other starters all played around 30, with the exception being Sterling Brown, played 36. Off the bench, Frank Mason played 30 minutes, and the other bench players, Kyle Korver played 24, TJ Wilson played 21, Ersan Ilyasova played 16. So, I mean, based on that information, what they did in this spot last year, it is the same coach, Coach Budenholzer with the team. I think that we can expect whoever ends up starting is probably going to play, like I said, somewhere around 30 minutes, and then we're looking at minutes somewhere in the low 20s range for most of the bench players, just based on what we saw last year. So prioritize who's ever starting, and then I wouldn't worry too much about bench guys, rostering them for value.
Okay. Yeah, that seems fair. And I think it's going to be, if Greg looks one way at the minutes and somebody else looks another way at the minutes, Awesemo just also ran the ownership projections for this. And it does seem the chalk going to Sam Merrill so far, with Jordan Nwora not far behind. And then weirdly, Connaughton the lowest of them, but I guess that's because he's at a different price point on DraftKings. On FanDuel too, he's one of the lower ones. Bryn Forbes, though, one play that looks better on DraftKings than on FanDuel. I think the price difference there and positionality definitely pushing in more of a DraftKings play than the FanDuel play. We'll talk about this more if there's any news that comes out during the show. But of course, make sure to stay tuned for Live Before Lock, because they will definitely get some more news during that hour here to lead you into this game. Next game up, we got Detroit and Washington. Detroit 4-point underdog on the road. I think in this spot with Detroit, Saben Lee is the guy who I think looks decent with the Awesemo minutes projection, I guess, on the assumption that Dennis Smith is out again. Corey Joseph played for Detroit yesterday and then did see a good amount of run. It was like a weird bit of rotation for him. We closed out the game, played a lot of minutes in the second half, but wasn't really getting regular run in the first half of that game. And Greg, for me with Detroit, we have Diallo out in this spot here for injury management. I don't know that I see a lot I like on Detroit, even against Washington, which does scare me a bit. Jeremy Grant, I think maybe the one you could sort of make a case for, but for the most part for me, maybe Saben Lee is a value play, but certainly far behind the Milwaukee guys. So I don't see a lot to love here for the Pistons.
Yeah, so, I mean, Dennis Smith Jr. was out yesterday, and Saben Lee only ended up playing 15 minutes. I know that Hamidou Diallo is also going to be out today, but we have such strong value plays from the Bucks guys. I agree. Saben Lee could play 25 minutes today and end up being a good value play, but I think there's a really wide range of outcomes with his minutes. I think he could play 15 minutes. I think he could play 25 minutes. It could be anything in between. I'm not going to risk it. I'm just going to play whoever the cheap guys are that start with Milwaukee, and I think that they're so much more likely to, number one, outscore him. And also there's just a lot more security with those guys over Saben Lee. So from the Pistons, like a moderate amount of interest in Jeremy Grant, and nothing else here that looks like something I want to get to at the moment.
Yeah, it's kind of a crowded rotation for a not good team. Like Magruder started the game yesterday at point guard, then he didn't play much after his first stint. And I don't know. The team doesn't make the most sense right now. And I think really, you get some flyers on the regular rotational guys like Grant, Plumlee, Even Isaiah Stewart, I guess I wouldn't hate, but as Greg mentioned, I agree with you. The value is just much better in a lot of other spots, and you are kind of forcing it there if you go this direction. For Washington side, we have Bradley Beal questionable. I haven't seen any news about him being officially ruled out or in yet, but that's definitely one news item to watch, because if he were out, we also got the news the Bucks guy's officially out, so just keep that in mind. And we have Bradley Beal's a game time decision came through 6 minutes ago, while Daniel Gafford is going to make his Wizards debut, while Chandler Hutchison's available to make his Wizards debut, but won't play after getting traded from the Bulls. So keep that in mind. Yeah, Avdija starting for Garrison Matthews. We have Bradley Beal, a game time decision. Greg, this is one too where I think you can't really do anything unless you know if Beal's in or out, because if Beal is out, I think that Westbrook is one of the best plays on the slate. If Beal is in, I think Beal's an okay tournament play that you can probably afford very easily. But how are you feeling about Washington, I guess, in contingency either situation of if Beal plays or if he doesn't play?
Yeah, I'm going to like Westbrook regardless if Beal is in or out. Westbrook's been so good from a fantasy perspective lately. If you look at the last handful of games from Westbrook, I mean, these box scores are pretty ridiculous. He just had 58 fantasy points against the Knicks. Then he had a bad game with 40 fantasy points. But before that, 70, 82, 62, 59, 80. So, I mean, we're looking at just really, really gaudy fantasy totals from Russell Westbrook. And even with Beal in, I don't think it matters because, like we've talked about, there's so much value on this slate. And with other guys getting ruled out, there aren't all that many options to pay up for. So Russell Westbrook is somebody who I think is going to be a really high floor play, number one, but really high ceiling play. And it's not hard to get to him. There's not a whole lot of opportunity cost, and we have all the salary in the world. So Russell Westbrook is definitely one of the guys in the pile of stud plays that I'm going to be pairing with all these Milwaukee values.
Somebody in the chat just said, first of all, said whore fart out, but I'm not seeing that yet coming through the news channels. So I laughed, though, because the idea of putting in Moses Brown into this equation, too, is just going to be a bridge too far for me. But we have not seen that confirmed yet. That is just somebody misspelling Horford.
Which and, also, here's good news, is even though this isn't real, I'm pretty sure Moses Brown is like 6,000 at this point anyway.
Wait, there's another person saying it too. Apparently it's a Woj one. Okay. So this is one where.
All right. But also, like I said, Moses Brown is 6,000. So it's not like this is, it's not like this is the, what is
this
Woj
is it.
say?
It came out 1 minute ago. ESPN sources says the Oklahoma City Thunder turn to younger players in the nightly rotation. 5-time All-Star center Al Horford will be no longer active for games this season. So
I'm surprised they didn't just try to trade him for something at the deadline then. I mean, I get nobody
wanted the contract, I would bet.
They got picks to take on the contract. So it's not like there was any real risk in taking him on or anything, but Horford was actually playing reasonably well. But I mean, whatever. Let's see. When do we get to OKC soon? We'll just talk about it.
We do get to OKC, I think, in the next couple games. So we'll see if we get a minutes projection on there, minutes update on there. I just got to say for Washington before we move on here, Rui Hachimura, a guy that I've been seeing pop up in my lineups a little bit more, I think because of the preponderance of minutes he's been getting. Awesemo has been for 38 today. I think he's a fine play at that price point. You know, sometimes you need a guy at the 5K and above range on DraftKings or similar prices on FanDuel. And Rui's a guy I just never mind getting to, if I think as long as he's opening up other parts of a configuration for a roster that I like. So I just wanted to put Rui out there. I know, Greg, you probably don't have a strong Rui opinion, but if you do, feel free to give it here.
No, I'm probably not going to roster him tonight just because, like, what is their need to roster somebody who has a reasonably fair price in the mid-range? Like, there's like I said, there's unlimited amount of value to spend on value on the slate. And it's not like Hachimura to me projects way differently than, say, like Bryn Forbes, right? Like, I mean, Hachimura comes out a little bit better in terms of the total projection I have for him, but I mean, Hachimura who have around 30 fantasy points, and then there's a bunch of these Bucks guys who I have in the neighborhood of like 26 to 27 fantasy points. So give me the few $1,000s salary savings.
Would you agree with me, though, that he does become a better play if we do get Beal out? Because he definitely has put that usage up a bit more when we've seen one of Westbrook or Beal out. And I'm curious here, because I think, to me, I agree with you, like on a value basis, like I'd rather have the 3K guys who are going to project similarly. But I think sometimes you do need a 6K-ish guy in there just to break up whatever configuration and not leave 5K on the table, which I think you still wouldn't want to do in a slate of the size. So I guess I'm just trying to give you an out here to say Rui's a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything against Rui Hachimura, but yeah, I agree with you.
I don't know why you hate him so much personally.
there's a lot. I don't have him on any basketball teams, but there's a lot of usage going to him when Beal is off the court. Like the usage numbers, if you look at it when Beal's out, it's a boost to Hachimura, Westbrook gets a boost, and then a lot of other people kind of stay stagnant. So yeah, he's one of the only players that really benefits from a usage standpoint with Beal off the court.
Jeremy Savage, thank you for the super chat. One of our regulars in here asking, is this the worst slate of all time? What will happen next? I think it's how you view it. It's the worst slate of all time if every single piece of Bucks value plays terribly somehow and we all played them 50 to 100%. But if those plays go off, like I think these are the most fun slates. I don't know if you feel differently, Greg, but I just like when you have value you can trust where there's a very clear path to it. And then you're just kind of deciding which ones that you believe in. I think that to me rewards people who are playing every day. And honestly, guys who do know the Mamadi Diakites of the world, because that's nobody knows that guy. So I think that's a bit of an advantage on a slate like this.
The worst slates, I don't mind this. Like when there's a bunch of value and then we just figure out like, oh, here's who's starting. These are the best guys to plug in. To me, the worst slates are where like, hey, it's 9 p.m. The 10 p.m. game gets canceled due to COVID, and now there's nobody to swap to. And you have you've players in that lineup, and there's just nothing you could do. Paul George is a chalk play. He gets scratched due to dizziness a minute after the game starts, and Eric starts crying on the stream. Like those are the worst slates. Like slates where you know the news ahead of time and it's just a lot of news is not that bad. It's when news comes out that you can't do anything about. Like I remember the first one that happened to me when I was playing DFS in college was a game in Mexico City between the Spurs and the Timberwolves where the stadium like caught fire and there was a smoke issue and they just couldn't play because the stadium was too smoky. And that was before the late swap days. It was just like, hey, I had like Nikola Pekovic in all my lineups that night. And all of a sudden I got zeros from him. So the worst slates are the ones where unforeseen stuff happens, not where we just get a bunch of news hours in advance.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think, value plays, it's fun to play new guys to me, fun to play guys who I think are cheap. It's when everybody is 5K and 6K and you're paying like 7K for Joe Ingles. I think those are the days where I mostly just want to go, I don't want to do this today, but this is fun. We'll see how it goes. We're going to soundbite these a little bit faster here to make up some time, Greg, because I think we have a couple games that aren't going to have the most interesting plays. Chicago at San Antonio, I think, is another one where you have Vucevic coming into the lineup, making his debut here. Alex has him in for 35 minutes. Probably not a big curve here for Vuce. They're going to do a lot of things built around him. But as a result of Vooch being in, I think you could play Vooch himself and maybe Zach LaVine still, but I don't love these guys being priced pretty much where they were before this trade because Vooch is going to take a good amount of usage off the table. He's also probably not going to see as much as he got in Orlando. Same thing for Zach LaVine. I think he's probably going to still get to 30% usage, but for the most part, probably a few less assists, probably a little bit less overall, I think, of a floor night tonight, Greg. And for the rest of the Bulls, I wouldn't want to play a single one of them. I think there's not an appealing price here. And if anybody who's even value adjacent is still way more expensive than anybody on Milwaukee. So anything you see on Chicago side?
One thing real quick, I'm just going to address that we did get a super chat from R. Cathelza. He said, opinion Milwaukee opportunity cost for roster spots on DK. Just play all the Milwaukee guys. Like whoever ends up starting value, load up on them, pay up for studs. I don't think there's any real issue with playing just as many bucks as you could reasonably fit into your lineup to pay up for studs. So I assume almost all my lineups are going to have at least 3 or 4 players from Milwaukee in them. But getting to Chicago, something else there, another news item from the latest injury report, Zach LaVine is questionable. So add that into the mix of things that could potentially fudge up the slate. So, yeah, I mean, if Zach LaVine is going to be out, then I actually think Vucevic, as long as he starts and there's no kind of restrictions for him in his Chicago debut, then I think he's a reasonable pay-up option. Like, we don't know what he's going to look like in Chicago. So without Zach LaVine there, I assume he's just going to carry a massive amount of usage. If Zach LaVine's in, then Chicago is just going to be a fade for me because I don't know what the offense is going to look like with Vucevic there, and I assume that LaVine's going to lose out on some shots to Vooch.
Yeah. Okay. So that's reasonable. Yeah. The LaVine thing, I think, would change the equation for me where probably Satoransky, I think Kobe White would take a little bit of a jump up. Really, I think everybody for the Bulls would take a bit of a jump up there. And I agree with Greg too, that Vooch should be more of a priority play. Definitely one place I'd be willing to spend up on the slate if we did get news that LaVine is out. But right now, the projections that we have say that he's in. So going to treat it like that. And of course, watch the Live Before Lock show with EMac and Terry coming up. So I'll give you any more news. San Antonio, Greg, I think the one thing that just jumped out was that DeMar DeRozan's usage was crazy high in the 2 games against the Clippers. I could have just been because it's a tough defensive matchup and you need your best guy to get his own shots as best he can, but 38 and 40% usage in those 2 games, interesting, but overall longer term sample. I mean, you see some more assists from DeRozan in court time without Aldridge, but the rest of these guys, Pirtle, I think is priced up enough. I don't see getting there. DeRozan, Murray, White looks okay, but I think compared again to that Milwaukee value, probably better to save the money and go there. I don't see anybody really meaningful for San Antonio, Greg. Is there anybody for you who's more meaningful?
No, I'll make this easy, and this is one we could glance over. I'm not going to be rostering anybody from the Spurs tonight, at least not intentionally. Like if somebody slips into like one of 150 lineups or something like that, so be it. But there's nobody here that looks like a good play. There's so much value on Milwaukee. Like I said, pay up options, stars, and scrub slate. No reason to roster mid-range guys who are generally fairly priced today.
All right, next game up and smash that like button, guys. We need them a lot here because this show is testing the mettle of both our ability as hosts and also our sanity. So that's really something that we could use your support. So smash that like button here and keep it tuned here for the hour after our show, because Live Before Lock will be coming up with EMac and Terry, and any more news that comes. I'm sure there'll be more that ruins everything, but they will take you through that as best they can. Boston and Oklahoma City. We got the news that Al Horford was out on the Oklahoma City side. He won't be playing again for the Thunder, it would seem. Boston side, we do not have any Daniel Tice anymore. We also have no Kemba Walker, who is resting. And I think that's really, and no Evan Fournier too. He's not making his debut today due to health protocols, and unclear if that's a new thing or just the results of the trades. I don't know why the other Magic guys would be available this weekend and Fournier wouldn't, but we'll find out. But Greg, in this spot, I think Tatum looks okay. I think Marcus Smart looks okay. And Tatum I'm going to bring up because I think as he's at a price point, a guy that I wouldn't mind fleshing out with the other value plays. But besides that, I guess Peyton Pritchard is another value pivot, but still one I think you're kind of forcing in there. Besides that, though, I feel like it's Tatum, and Robert Williams on FanDuel looks like a very good play, decent play on DraftKings, but a really good play on FanDuel. But how are you feeling about the Celtics?
Yeah, so Jason Tatum is going to be definitely somebody I want to pay up for. He's a little bit too cheap, in my opinion, on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Number one, his price has gone down recently, but then we also have Kemba Walker out back-to-back. Kemba Walker doesn't play in back-to-back, so that's extra usage that goes to Jason Tatum. So with that in mind, his current price point, he's somebody that's, pretty easy to fit in with some of those other guys where I'm going to have, most of my lineups, like I said, $3-4 guys, a bunch of pay up options. Jason Tatum's going to be in the bucket of options of guys that I pay up for. Jaylen Brown to a lesser extent, but Jason Tatum is a higher priority for me. I'm not exactly sure, if I'm being honest, what I'm going to end up doing with Robert Williams, because I really, really liked him earlier in the day when I was building the initial amounts of my lineups. I haven't gotten to build new lineups yet just because the Bucks news came out right before we started the show. And I have a feeling that even though I have Robert Williams projected as one of the top centers on the play from a points per dollar basis, I don't know that I'm going to be getting to him as much now just because there's so much value that's opened up on the slate. So I don't know that somebody in that mid-range, as good as he looks points per dollar, it might be hard to make him a priority.
Yeah, I think I would prefer Moses Brown a little bit cheaper, and I would have better projected on DraftKings. I think Robert Williams certainly still in play, and I agree with you. I just don't think the optimization and sorting process for me will give him up a bunch, which sucks because, it's nice to see him starting, and I think his price still offers a little bit of upside. He's a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy, played just shy, I think, of 28 minutes. Last game is in for 27 minutes from Awesemo today. But still, definitely tough to get there on the slate. The OKC side, we have no Horford, as we mentioned earlier. Moses Brown, a result to me, takes a jump up. I think Teo Maledon also becomes normally would look like a good play, I think, on DraftKings, but on this slate, I don't know that you'll get a ton of him still. But to me, that's sort of it for OKC, Greg. I think Brown and Maledon to be the priority plays I see here, but what are you thinking for the Thunder?
Yeah, so I mean, assuming Moses Brown starts, which we saw him start in recent games without Al Horford, he was really, really strong in those games. I'm going to bring up his numbers really quick. The other thing also, SGA is out dealing with a foot injury. Yep. I suspect that SGA is not going to play again this season. I think he's going to get shut down. I think we've seen the last of his season. So there's a whole bunch of playing time, a whole bunch of usage to go around. Moses Brown has made 4 starts this year. It feels like more, but I guess it's because they were all recent. But 4 starts this year for Moses Brown, 29 minutes per game, 34.8 DraftKings points in those starts. That's really significant production. Now, when you also consider Baisley's still out, SGA injury, like that's just going to be more usage that has to go to Moses Brown. Maybe even Pokashevsky to an extent is going to see a boost, but it's going to be hard to prioritize him like over those Bucks guys that we talked about. But Moses Brown and then Isaiah Roby, I didn't think to see what his price is. Roby at 5,700. So he's priced about the same as Moses Brown. I'd much rather get to Moses Brown than Isaiah Roby. So yeah, it's going to be Moses Brown, who I assume starts at center for the rest of the year and should be a really strong fantasy option.
Two quick super chats. One that I think we answered, but let's see, that other one went away. But shout out Fantasy Guru 76 for a fun superhero being of some sort. I don't know what that guy is, but I like him and I appreciate the super chat. And we got one question here from TJ Zwarich asking if you were to play one on FanDuel, is it Moses Brown or Robert Williams? I guess, Greg, how would you treat that now? I think they're still pretty close plays. Williams' price is appealing. What's Brown on FanDuel? Actually, I didn't know that in advance. See, I know Williams is 5,600, Brown's 5,400. They're pretty much the same play on FanDuel. I think that Brown is the better play because he's a bit cheaper on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, I think they're both about equal to me.
I'm going to be interested to see what the ownership is. I assume I'm going to have Moses Brown projected a bit higher just because there's more minute stealing for him. As much as I love Robert Williams, the Celtics have not been giving him, like 35, 36 minutes. I think he's going to start and probably play somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 minutes. But Moses Brown probably plays over 30 minutes in this spot. So because I see more playing time upside in him, and then also that Mo Wagner in the mix for the Celtics, I don't think that matters a ton to Robert Williams, but it matters enough for me to like Moses Brown over Robert Williams.
All right, let's keep going here because we got a bunch of games to go. And now I know how Lofty falls into this trap sometimes during the week because when there's even a little bit of news, it really throws us off schedule. But this game, I think we could get through pretty fast. Memphis at Utah. Utah 117.8 implied total. No Mike Conley for them today. So Joe Ingles was going to be chalky earlier. Probably not the case now. Jordan Clarkson also going to have some ownership, but not as much as he would have had earlier in the day. I think on the Memphis side, Greg, I don't see much. John Morant find enough tournament play. Jonas Valanciunas find enough tournament play, but I'd rather go cheaper. I'd rather go to Moses Brown. I'd rather go up to Karl-Anthony Towns. I just don't think this is a Jonas Valanciunas slate. And on Utah's side, I think you could play your usual Ingles or Clarkson. Still not as good of a value as the Bucks and some of the other guys, but what from this game jumps out to you, if anything, Greg?
From the Memphis side, absolutely nothing. Easy fade. We could skip past some really tough matchup against Utah. All the value on the slate. No reason to roster anybody from the Grizzlies.
And for Utah, Ingles, Clarkson, are these guys as appealing to you, or now that they're mostly priced up? I think Clarkson's cheap enough, but Ingles, to me, I think a lot of the value has been squeezed out of the opportunity for him without Conley.
Yeah, so these plays are different on FanDuel than they are on DraftKings. So Conley doesn't play in back-to-backs, and DraftKings knowing that, both sites should have known that information ahead of time. Conley hasn't played in a back-to-back since, I think it was February 3rd and February 4th. So DraftKings just priced these guys assuming that Conley was going to be out. FanDuel just totally caught off guard by the news. So Jordan Clarkson, he's still at 4,500 on FanDuel. He's a strong play. Joe Ingles is a lower priority play than Jordan Clarkson, but still at his price point on FanDuel, he's worth rostering. Donovan Mitchell is somebody who I would have liked had there not been all this value that makes it just easier to pay up for the studs on the slate. So Jordan Clarkson and Joe Ingles, more as FanDuel specific plays, they are viable options. And then a little bit lower priority on DraftKings. The guys who Clarkson, at least I thought I was going to get to on DKO in the day, but I don't think that's going to be the case anymore.
One quick news item that is Kevin Porter Jr. starting, as Greg thought earlier. It is not going to be Kelly Olynyk starting, though he is available to make his Rockets debut. Avery Bradley won't make his today. Rocket starters: Wall, Porter Jr., Brown, Tate, Wood. So keep that in mind. Next game up, we got Dallas and New Orleans. Luka Doncic questionable. The assumption, which has now been, I think, reflected in Awesemo's projections, that Porzingis won't be playing on the back-to-back here. And if that's the case, I think Luka, if he's in, looks good. If Luka is out, you probably have to go back to Jalen Brunson, who I think I was still looking like I was going to get earlier today, and he doesn't project too poorly his value at 4,200 on DK. Kleber, I think, also takes a bit of a jump up. I feel more comfortable going to him today with no Porzingis. Also, Willie Cauley-Stein out due to the health protocols. But for Dallas, it's clearly the Luka show, Greg, where you can easily afford him if he gets in. How are you handling the potential for Luka tonight and the rest of the Mavs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna hope Luka plays. If he doesn't, I'm just gonna cry a lot. Because it's so easy to plug him in without Porzingis. There, we have all the value in the world. Luka, as much as he sucked the other night, now that we found out that he had a back injury that forced him to miss yesterday, I think we have a little bit of an excuse as to why he played so poorly. He was probably hurt that game. So if he's in, I'm assuming that if he's in today, his back is fine. He's back to full health. The other thing too is we don't need the typical big 60 fantasy point games from Luka Doncic. If we're going to get these Bucks guys to all score 25, 30 fantasy points, then the high-end options, raw points matter a lot more than what the actual points per dollar production ends up being. So it's just going to be whoever scores the most fantasy points on the slate that you pair with these cheap guys. And to me, that's going to be Luka more often than not, as long as he's in, especially with the usage bump he gets without Porzingis, a favorable matchup against the Pelicans. So Luka, I hope he's in. I'm expecting he's in right now, but maybe think a little bit more with my heart than my head here, because I think he's probably close to a 50-50 proposition.
Yeah, so definitely another key news item to watch out for on a day in which you're going to be doing as much news watching as you are actual DFS lineup building. New Orleans side, we saw a crazy day from Zion yesterday. One that I think was not actually a slate breaker in terms of there were still some top finishing lineups that didn't have them in there, at least on FanDuel. And I think on DraftKings too, actually, if I'm remembering correctly. But either way, Zion, a fantastic day yesterday, almost 40 real life points, added in some rebounds and assists. Nickeil Alexander-Walker looked like he'd be one of the chalkiest plays of the day. Still going to have a good amount of ownership, it seems, but not a must-have play potentially with that Bucks value. Though a guy you can go to now who would have been one of the top plays on the slate before all the Bucks value opened up, and maybe that's a way to get different for your tournament lineups today. But Greg, Eric Bledsoe too. I feel like your guy, former MVP in your mind, Eric Bledsoe. He also had a nice game yesterday, and I think still on the cusp of usability, maybe more so before the Bucks news came out. But what are you getting from New Orleans here in the spot against Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of guys here that looked really good early in the day. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who averages over 30 fantasy points as a starter. Lonzo Ball, not expected to play. He's doubtful. But once again, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think he's somebody who's going to get pinched by all this Bucks news, because he's somebody who's priced just over 5,000 and now only projects marginally higher for me than some of these Bucks cheap plays. So NAW, maybe I'll have a small amount of exposure to him, but not a priority. Eric Bledsoe is going to get pinched for me, unfortunately. I know first player in NBA history to win a championship before his rookie year, first player to get inaugurated into the Hall of Fame while he's still playing. But Eric Bledsoe, for all his great accomplishments he's had in the NBA and his multiple MVP trophies, he is not going to make my player pool for this slate. Boost for him without Lonzo Ball, but not enough to make him a priority over all the other values we have. And Zion, a low priority pay up option for me. I'm going to prioritize some of the more expensive, Russell Westbrook, Luka Doncic type guys. Zion probably like a 5 to 10% guy for me or something.
Yeah, and I think I'd prefer Tatum too, even at the same position and same price point, but still definitely should be in play. And I think, there honestly wouldn't be the worst idea to just get 10% Zion on most nights for whatever reason. I think every projection system I've seen out there just doesn't account for, it's going to be tough to account for the ceiling of Zion, but we keep seeing it night in and night out, or at least more nights than not. And it's not there night in, night out, which I guess is it's going to make him settle in the middle for a lot of people, but never seems like a bad idea to get some Zion here. A couple super chats to catch up on real fast. TJ's Warwick saying one more super chat because Spags pronounced my name right, and because he also likes Pokemon. I do, especially as a reference point when comparing to Dr. Ben Ross on the tip-off shows. Another super chat from Zach Anderson. Are $4 a must in DK cash? I think you're probably playing at least 3, and 4 seems fine, Greg, but do you have any feel for that?
It depends on what the starting lineup is. As of now, that would be a yes for me. I would say that you want to get in. Let me bring
Merrill,
the Bucks
Forbes,
guys back up.
Thanasis,
I think it was Merrill, Forbes, Thanasis, and Tentacoupo, and Pat Connaughton. I would say as of now, assuming that all 4 of those guys start alongside Brook Lopez, those 4 guys, I'd put all of them into cash at a minimum. Thanasis, Forbes, and Merrill.
Yep, I think I'm with you on that one. All right, let's go to our next game. We got one more super chat real fast, which didn't say anything. It was Cup 3000 giving us $2, and we appreciate you, Cup 3000. You are truly a king among men. Next game, we can make this. We're going to do it. 2 games left. Cleveland at Sacramento, 107.8 implied points. Tyler, our producer, overjoyed after sending me a deeply concerned Slack in the middle point of the show. Cleveland, 107.8 implied points. No Jarrett Allen today, but Colin Sexton expected back from them. Allen out with a concussion. And one of the questions that we, I guess, still need here is Isaiah Hartenstein. His availability, I think, hasn't been clarified yet. If he is out, which I think he's been out in our projections, but at one point was not out in our ownership and looked like one of the better value plays. I think he's still a pretty good value play if he makes it in, especially if he somehow picks up a start. But if he doesn't get in the lineup, especially, I think Larry Nance looks still playable to me, though he does fit, Greg, what you were talking about, that kind of mid-tier group of guys that, not fantastic amounts of upside potentially, or not fantastic, I guess, mid-tier projections. But I still think Nance looks okay. And Broderick Thomas also getting 19 minutes from Awesemo seems like an okay value, though fits the criteria of not quite as good as the Bucks value. But what are you seeing from Cleveland, Greg? And is there anything that opens up meaningfully for you without Jarrett Allen?
So the expected starting lineup for Cleveland right now is Darius Garland, Colin Sexton, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, and Larry Nance Jr. Isaiah Hartenstein, I believe he is expected to play. He's at least expected to be active today. We don't even know whether he's going to be in the rotation or not, because number one, he's Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, remember, we had those Rocket slates last year. Remember, there was a slate where he was like 60% owned or something like that. and ended up playing 0 minutes until garbage time. So there's been times where Hartenstein has been in situations on other teams where he was a part of the rotation and ended up getting 0 minutes or nearly 0 minutes as a chalk play. So I don't really have massive expectations for Hartenstein. There's so many better value options now. The only way that I'd want to roster Hartenstein is if he ends up starting for the Cavaliers. If he's not starting, I don't know, number one, if he's definitely going to be active. I don't know if he's going to be in the rotation. If he is, I don't know how significant a piece of the rotation he's going to be. So there's so many variables there that I just rather stick to the Bucks value guys unless we hear something different on Hartenstein. As for the other guys on Cleveland, like Colin Sexton as a pay-up option, I would like him in this spot against the Kings on most slates. Kings are one of the most favorable fantasy matchups possible. Really bad defensive rating. They played at a really fast pace, but I think there's a lot of opportunity cost to playing somebody in the price range of Colin Sexton because it probably could come at the cost of rostering somebody like a Luka Doncic, a Russell Westbrook, Karl Anthony Towns. So it's just a price range that I don't really think I'm going to be getting into today. Larry Nance looked like he could be a good player on the day when we first saw Jared Allen get ruled out. But once again, I don't think that's going to be the case for me either because it's just that price range to me kind of has become no man's land with all the value available.
Let's talk Sacramento. Then we got a super chat to hit on. But on Sacramento's side, De'Aaron Fox, I think, is the play that looks viable to me. Never really a guy that I mind getting to, especially when you are going to have some money to spend tonight. I think if we don't get news that Beal is out and Westbrook doesn't become a high priority play, I think I'll get a good amount of Fox in addition to a good amount of Westbrook, just because I don't think that Westbrook is a must-have at 11K on DraftKings unless Beal is out. But Fox, to me, I think looks fine. Buddy Hield, I'm a little bit less into today at his price with all the other value. And I think just honestly, I'd rather go to a cheap guy than Buddy Hield, but he's always a player that I never really mind. Tyrese Halliburton, I don't think will be much of a core play for people out there today, but I think it does get a little bit uglier for him with Delon Wright expected to make his debut for the Kings tonight. If that changes, that can make things a little better here where Kyle Guy was in the rotation as the third guard last time out for the Kings. But Greg, anything for you here besides De'Aaron Fox, or do you feel like Fox is a particularly good play worth trying to force your way to more?
No, so De'Aaron Fox, I kind of put him in the same bucket as Zion Williamson, where he's somebody who projects well enough and is at a salary where is probably going to be somebody to get to in like 5 to 10% of my lineups just because there's so much value. We're going to be looking for guys to spend up for. So De'Aaron Fox, not a priority, but he's going to be in the player pool. Nobody else is somebody that I want to get to, though. I've been really high on Tyrese Halliburton over the last week or so. He's been playing ridiculously well also since moving into the starting lineup, but once again, somebody in that price range where he's 5,600 on FanDuel and then a little over 6,000 on DK off the top of my head. And that's just a price range where he's a little bit too cheap, but it doesn't matter for this slate because there's a lot of guys who are very much too cheap. So even good value is not good enough when there's great value available to us.
All right, one super chat here, and then we got one more game to hit on, which shockingly also has some injuries. But Carlton Freeze asking on DK utility, would you go with O'Neal? I presume he means Royce O'Neal or Steven Adams. I think Steven Adams would be my choice there. He played 40 minutes last game against Denver, which doesn't seem like something you could trust necessarily. But in for 29 minutes from Awesemo today, I think a cheap price. Still not a position I would want to go to center-wise. I think it still makes more sense to go down. But 4,900 is your price point that you're trying to get to, and I think you just want to get a player in there. Adams would be my choice, Greg, but do you like O'Neal more or do you like Steven Adams?
I'd say you're probably best off rebuilding your lineup, and that's not even be like cheeky or anything like that. But there's no point where I think you need a roster either of those guys. There's a slate that we have tonight where there's so many good plays that I don't think there's a point where I'm just looking through to see if maybe there's somebody. Oh, you know what? I lied. Pat Connaughton at 4,900. If you need a roster, Pat Connaughton, he's somebody at a roster 4,900. But there's no like Steven Adams, not somebody I want to roster. Royce O'Neal, not somebody I want to roster. Pat Connaughton at 4,900. With all the Bucks guys out, he's a good value. But those other guys you mentioned, the price range, those are not good plays in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't mind Adams, but I think I don't mind it more in the context of you're doing 150 lineups or you're doing a couple 20 maxes, whatever the case may be. If you're building one lineup, I agree with Greg very much that that's a little bit too cute getting away from Connaughton, who I think is probably the one player you can actually trust in that Bucks rotation for the most part, who's going to get minutes and has been shown the ability to be productive. As I mentioned earlier, even in games with Giannis and Middleton and Drew Holiday available and DiVincenzo too, he's shown the ability to have an upside. So when he's getting kind of that blank slate to do what he wants, I agree. Like that's got to be the priority play. But if you're putting in a bunch of lineups, I'd prefer Adams. Last game here, we got Philadelphia at the Clippers. Philadelphia side 107.8 implied total. Clippers side 112.8. Kawhi questionable again. Ibaka still out on Philadelphia side. We do not have any Joel Embiid still, but Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Greg, don't project that well for me. I don't see a lot to love for Philadelphia. And at this point too, I don't think you need to even consider Mike Scott, who could pick up the start again after he did last time out.
We have some news, first of all, that we have to hit on here. 5 minutes ago, it was announced Julius Randle will be a game-time decision. As of 30 seconds ago, Julius Randle is out. Bradley Beal is in, though. So a little bit of clarity on that situation. But yeah, Julius Randle is out, but we're not even going to have enough time to hit all that. We're going to have to leave that up to the live before lock guys. And then one other thing also, Gene Kim, who said, convince me to take the night off, please. No, I'll do the opposite. I will tell you to play more volume than usual. And thank you for the super chat.
All right. So Philadelphia, does anybody seem meaningful to you? I'm just putting Randall's minutes at 0 just to get an approximation of who I like for New York. But while I do that, Greg, is there anybody that jumps out for you at all on Philadelphia?
No. And one of the reasons also that I was able to take a little bit of liberties with the amount of time I talk there. Nobody I like on the Philadelphia side of the game. Just jump right into the Clippers side. I'll talk about that while you bring up some of the Knicks stuff. Hard to know what to make of the Clippers right now. Kawhi Leonard remains questionable to play. He missed last game and still up in the air on the injury report. Marcus Morris, he is questionable to play. So Paul George is somebody who is worth leaving in the player pool for now. He's somebody that already looks fairly decent on a points per dollar basis. And then if Kawhi Leonard gets ruled out, he only looks that much better. So if we find out going into the later slate of games that Kawhi is still questionable, I would say take him out of the player pool because it would be a little harder to move off him. You're good with having Paul George in because, like I said, good play that only gets better if Kawhi is ruled out.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Paul George, if we knew that news now, Paul George would be one of the guys that you're building around with all these value plays. And yeah, I'm on the same page there. I think Kawhi looks fine, but if you don't get that news within the hour that he's playing, I think Greg is right here. You just got to kind of go in with your best possible lineup, hoping that Kawhi or if you get Paul George, that's fine, but hoping that Kawhi doesn't break the slate somehow. And I think he does project well if he makes it in, but doesn't seem good. Zubac too. Also, I just got to say real fast, like he's fine. I think I'd rather have Moses Brown at this point. I'd rather have Robert Williams, but Zubac still playable to me as a pivot to those guys, just in case they somehow have a really bad outcome. And the last point here for the Knicks, I don't think any Knick meaningfully jumps out unless the minutes really go heavily to Obi Toppin. And then even he still probably won't be as good of a value play as the other ones on the Bucks that we've talked about ad nauseum today. But RJ Barrett looks okay. I think really, to me, I think this is going to be a spot where the Knicks probably would have been much more in play, Greg, if Randall were out normally. But on this slate, I just don't know that any Knick is going to take that big of a jump.
I have to think about it more, but I'm going to like how they correlate with the Bucks players. And that's usually an avenue I like to go down. But I'm just not sure that it's going to make sense on a points per dollar basis on this slate. And it just broke 90 seconds ago, and I had a lot of time to think about it. So that'll be up for EMac to decipher for you guys.
EMac and thankfully Terry too. They're here to help EMac out, get through these chaotic times here in NBA. Make sure you guys smash that like button for them coming up. Subscribe as well. Use that promo code starting9 at awesemo.com/join. 9 days of Awesemo plus MLB for just $9 with that promo code starting9, the number 9. Go to awesemo.com/join. Use that now. Greg, any final plugs for you before the live before lock crew gets to clean up here like they are in a Times Square adult room?
No, I'm just gonna say, guys, good luck because that's what we're gonna need tonight. We're gonna need to get these Bucks news and really pay attention to the news reports. Definitely follow at Awesemo_NBA on Twitter. Follow our guy, the news god El Negro Loco, because that's gonna be key. This is a slate where really news is gonna determine everything.
Also, Reggie Bullock out too. So there. So have
Fantastic.
fun on Live Before Lock next. Another hour of chaos in the NBA today. We appreciate you guys. Enjoy your nights and good luck. Bye. What a
Wait, my mom's calling. I gotta go. I got a hair
All
up.
right, have fun, guys. Catch you
Have a good night, guys.
Hey, my mom's muted.
No, that I had the show still on.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I thought I had muted it. This is gonna be a fun one.
So we're gonna go just news to news. This is gonna be a free flowing show.
Do your thing, I'll follow.
Yeah. I've got all my lineups in except for basketball. Which is good because NHL just locked. But I did everything else. I've even got the tiers lineups in. So
nice. I'm actually just going to hand build one while we do the show. So I'll go through my process, but I'm just going to take the one off the top. So
yeah,
I'll have the cruncher and stuff running. But yeah, I am not doing a full slate of entries on this one. It just got away from me.
Yeah. Great. EMac sounds hammered. No.
EMac's always hammered for these.
I wish I was. That would be so nice. There's 2 beers left in the fridge. The 2 beers that have been there since September.
I was going to say, the secret to consistent 20 years of consistent fantasy performance is just getting hammered.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Awesemo. Here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you with T. McBee, Terry McBride, as we are brought to you by SuperDraft. I want to let you know that SuperDraft is going an extra 30 minutes tonight. Their contests are locking at 8:30. We have had the world fall apart, or at least the DFS world fall apart, so we are going to jump into most everything. I do want to remind you that all shows other than Live Before Lock are posted on the Awesemo Podcast Network. We do have a free pinned tweet on how you can win 30 free days of Awesemo premium content today. We also have free hockey projections that just locked, but they have 2 more slates tonight plus Showdown. And then we have free NBA projections today. Look at that. Got most of it out of the way. Now we're going to talk some basketball here. Yes, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time breaking this slate down because it's already changed 3 times. And that was even since the live before, or the deeper dive started.
The show ended.
Yeah, and exactly. Well, Julius Randle's out. We have Bradley Beal in. I would have expected the converse of that. I am my one strategy tonight, probably in tournaments. I'm only going to play 2 Milwaukee Bucks. I think in cash, you can play 3 or 4 if you would like. I'm not excited about the Thunder because they have a tougher defensive matchup tonight. And as we saw last night and what we're going to see with the Bucks tonight, we saw last night with Orlando, they're not going to put together a competent offense. The Bucks are a little bit different because at least we know who's going to play. I don't trust Dante DiVincenzo and I don't trust Brook Lopez at all. We saw this in the bubble when they sat pretty much everybody and some guys were active. I think it was those 2, and then they ended up not playing, or they sat all the starters but DiVincenzo, and then he sat on the bench the whole game. I forget exactly what it was, but we've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends. It's not pretty. So I don't really trust anybody from there, which is where I'm going to try to be a little bit different from the chalk, and I'm limiting myself to 1 Oklahoma City Thunder player per team. Otherwise, we got a lot to talk about here, Terry. So let's talk a little bit about your Brooklyn Nets, your New York Knickerbockers. Goodness gracious. What do we want to do here? Is there anything worth salvaging from the Knicks squad tonight?
Randall has been all season long one of the go-to guys for us. Just going off of what I just dropped in here, and I'm waiting on the next update because it'll have our new ownership projections and all of that stuff. But I really don't think so. I mean, RJ Barrett is up to 7,600 on FanDuel, 7,000 on DK. Like, he would have been the guy that I would have plucked out of the air maybe to just, that's where some of that production is going to go. They're going to rely on the kid to do something. But at that price, he's been down in like the mid 5s and somewhere around there. So I think he's just priced up now for this situation. So I don't like it. If he was, in the normal tiers where we've seen him recently, then sure. I don't think we're, going to squeeze much extra out of Mitch Robinson. Still only like a 25-minute projection from Alex on him. Nerlens Noel, a lot of these guys, just with the value that we've got on the board, are priced in a different tier where we don't know what we're going to get. We don't know how many minutes they're going to produce. A few of them aren't necessarily the most productive guys in the world anyway. I just don't think we need to go here.
No, absolutely. I'm actually going to write down my list of player or teams that I'm crossing off so I can get my settings done. New York Knicks is one. I'm not going to, if somebody randomly makes it in, great, but I'm not going to play any of them. They have Elfrid Payton back in the mix. They've got Derrick Rose, who's missed the last 10 games. He's available tonight. And they've got Nerlens Noel, who was out for the last game. He's in again tonight. And as you mentioned, no Julius Randle, no Reggie Bullock. On the other side with Milwaukee, and thank you guys. I spent 20 minutes writing up my show sheet, and half these people were doubtful or questionable. I'm just going to read straight off my other news sources. So the people who are out for Milwaukee for sure: Giannis, Dante DiVincenzo, Bobby Portis, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, PJ Tucker, and Rodions Kurucs hasn't played in a month and a half since he was or more since he was with Houston. I think Bryn Forbes is the one guy I feel safest with. I don't know who half of these other guys are from a trust perspective, but we are now down to likely 7 or 8 guys that are going to set foot on the court. Mathematically, and I'm not playing Brook Lopez. Mathematically, I think we're going to see 25 to 30 minutes for each of those guys, even at 0.7 fantasy points per minute at their current prices. That's going to be perfectly fine.
Yeah, the entire team has become a kind of a smash spot. They ruled out all their actual NBA players, and now they've just got all these ridiculous min salary guys. So it's basically, when we put in placeholder lineups, and I don't know if you do it, but I usually flip the salary, so all the cheapest guys and just go like that. All those guys are starting now on this slate, so it's like I really don't know exactly which one of them is going to shine, but I think we just start plugging them in, playing a lot of them together, and then getting to a lot of the star plays, a lot of the high salary guys, and look for safety with those guys as you mix and match through some of these value plays. We've got 4 guys at min price on FanDuel, more than that, 5 guys on DK at min price, plus a 3,100 guy on this team. There are just so many different places we can go. The boom score probabilities from Alex for DK are all through the roof. Same thing for FanDuel. It's just a little bit more extreme on DK, where these guys are costing $3,000. You got, for example, a 91.1% boom score probability on Sam Merrill because he's got a 36-minute projection. He's a 0.75 fantasy point per minute producer this year, but that's in all situations. So in a situation where he's going to get some usage focused on him and some actual running time, he could certainly produce that. He doesn't need to do a lot to put up a boom score, an upside score for that salary. So, yeah, just start mixing and matching these guys and fire away, because it's anybody's guess who's going to get what minutes, but they're all going to get a lot of minutes.
Yeah, we don't have an official starting lineup yet for okay. In that one, again, I at this point, I'm Lopez is the last guy who I just don't see playing a lot of minutes, and would almost shock me at this point if he would start. Trying to parse who is the best play amongst these, that's going to be a salt to taste. Again, that's where I'm looking at, 3 in cash is fine. I really don't know that I want more than 2 or 3 in tournaments, just to try to be a little bit different. All right, we have 3 8:00 games. That one's like 5 games within itself. Detroit and Washington is our next one. Washington's favored by 4. We now know that Bradley Beal is in. Russell Westbrook, still a phenomenal play. Why? Because salary cap doesn't matter tonight. We have multiple teams that are going to be starting essentially minimum price guys at multiple spots. So don't worry about his $11,000 price tag on DK and FanDuel over there. We know Dennis Smith Jr. is out. We know Saban Lee is active. Hamidou Diallo still out for Detroit. We don't know yet for Rodney McGruder. It's really not going to matter. Daniel Gafford is in. I suspect we're going to see him play a little bit more center into the center rotation. I don't know that he'll start, but I suspect before too long he's going to be ahead of Robin Lopez Robin Lopez in the rotation there. The guys that Washington sent out never really play. Moritz Wagner hadn't played in 5 or 6 games, and the other Troy Brown Jr. hadn't played in like 3 or 4 games. So that's really not going to impact their rotation that much. It's really hard to trust anybody outside of Beal and Westbrook. Davis Bertans out for a few more games, doesn't move the needle, and none of their new guys do either. Denny Abdia is supposed to be starting. So we're really down to, as I said this the other night, anybody that has more than a 30% usage rate on the Wizards, start them. Don't start anybody else. So no Rui Hachimura for me. Detroit, on the other hand, nobody particularly standing out, but we love the Washington matchup. That just actually went up to Washington favored by 5, and a 225 over under that just ticked up. So Jeremy Grant, I guess, maybe a little Plumlee.
Yeah, I mean, those are typically the only guys I'm really willing to go to on Detroit anyway. I mean, this is very much a game that's like, go to the guys you would normally play. Don't overthink this one. I would get to some Rui in tournaments still. I think he's still a little bit on the board. I do like getting to him. I think he's still a little underpriced for his potential upside. So on both sides, I think we can get to him, and I like the power forward center combination, but he's a much stronger play on FanDuel where you get him at a small forward spot for a pretty decent price. So I do like getting to him. Most of the rest of the guys on Washington, it's just more about the two big guards, particularly since we have all the money in the world to spend, and we know they're both going to be in. And
for that, I should say there are just so many better point per dollar plays. He's kind of hanging out in that mid-tier where you're not going to get him. He's not a bad play tonight, but he just got surpassed by about 20% of the player pool by doing absolutely nothing wrong.
Right. Yeah. Normally where we would need that $5,700 guy, $5,900 guy. Now we can use like an $8,000 guy in that spot. So that's going to soak up some of the potential spots I would have had him in. But definitely, I would still consider him a mix and match and take what I get of him. Because I do like that you're getting him at a little bit of leverage there. So it would be more salary to play with. I'm usually open to leaving like $1,200 on the table if it's a lineup that really hews toward our optimal constructions and has a good projection that is close to the optimal and everything. But usually all those lineups get sorted out through the wash in my process here. I'll just allow them to get into the Excel file. Tonight, I think we're going to have lineups that are relevant lineups, relevant constructions with a ton of salary just left on the table, because some of these plays, especially for 150 lineup builders, just on pure need to vary things up a little bit, some of these guys are going to be under owned. So I think through leverage, it would kind of force some plays like that in for me a little bit.
All right, we got a good question here and I'll chat, not to fear. I'm going to talk about it quickly. So they're asking from Premium Chat, when you're building a single entry lineups using the lineup builder, how do you establish the highest possible score you can get while getting a good value and contrarian ranking? In basketball, it's going to be very difficult to get good value and contrarian ranking. That's because it is the most projectable sport. We kind of know where everybody's going to go. That's everybody in playing knows where everybody should be ranked in the DFS world from a point per dollar basis. Now, here's the trick. You can differentiate, even if you differentiate it just 2 spots, you're going to be fine. What that means is here's an easier way to explain it. Instead of taking the best absolute price per dollar play at each of the positions, take the second best one. You're still going to show that you have a good or a low contrarian ranking with the way basketball works, but you're going to be different than the vast majority of the teams. Any other little tricks like that, Terry? Because the herd is going to be strong on a lot of plays tonight, and it's not going to take much to differentiate, like with the Rui Hachimura, who, again, not a bad play, just not the, oh my God, I can have everybody I want on this team if I just ignore the Milwaukee Bucks guys getting 20 to 25 points each.
Yeah, and that's something, that's one where I really like to put the lineup builder next to our boom bust tool and use the optimal lineup rate column as kind of the guideline of which the top plays are, and then start picking guys off, peel guys off the top of that based on the leverage score, which takes into account their ownership against the frequency with which we find them optimal, and then start looking for other guys at either discounts, similar salary tiers, whatever the case may be, who are similarly frequently optimal. Yeah, similarly in the optimal lineup with that kind of frequency, and also have comparable boom scores or raw point projections, and start just making some of those swaps. And that's kind of how you can just, you build out the optimal. You can do that through Fantasy Cruncher, just run one off the top with no randomness and just one unique set. That'll be your optimal lineup. And then you can start just comparing the overall total projected score. And then as you're making the ownership swaps, keep in mind that you're not just looking for, all right, I've got 7 of the 9 spots filled with the chalkiest possible plays. Now let me put one guy in there that's 2% owned and one guy in there that's 0.5% owned. Not how it works. We want to start building in combinations of guys that are low owned, right? So we want to get to guys in the teens together. Guys, if you have a couple guys that are in like the 40s, build in a couple guys that are 8 to 10, 8 to 12, somewhere around there, but use a few of them so that it differentiates. You're looking for the combination. You're looking for a low-owned combination of players, not to just have 2 random guys in there who are 0.5%, but very unlikely to do anything for you. You do want to mix in some of the, low-owned guys that have upside, but it's not all about just looking for, all right, there's a 0.5 guy, let's go.
All right, our last 8:00 game. Reminder: we are staying on from 8 to 8:30 to talk about SuperDraft. Their contests are going to be a 6-game slate. If you have not yet signed up, you can do so over at SuperDraft.io if you are online, or you can download the SuperDraft app. Use the promo code Awesemo 21, and you will get a deposit bonus with your first deposit. They will match you up to $50. That will come in super cash. The other nice thing about their app is each day you can spin the wheel. That's not available on the desktop. It's on the app only. But the other day I won a $3 ticket. So I will be creating that lineup tonight when we finish with the main slate lock. Our last 8:00 game here is going to be the Houston Rockets at the Minnesota Timberwolves. Feels like we just saw this game. Oh, we did. We saw it last night. Daniel House is away from the team for personal reasons. Avery Bradley is not available. Dante Exum, not available. I don't know if he's played yet this year. And then on the other side, we have no Josh Okogie. Malik Beasley back from his 12-game suspension for felony weapons charges and drugs charges. So, hat tip to you, kid. Have fun. Kevin Porter Jr. will be starting. Kelly Olynyk available. And this looks like an absolute mess. I love John Wall. While he sat 5 games after the All-Star break, he did play in their last back-to-back, which was either at the end of last weekend or the beginning of this week. I've lost track of time now because days mean nothing because the news keeps changing. It's like we've had 5 slates already today, but he played in the neighborhood of 34 to 35 minutes in each. And then the second half of the back-to-back, he played like 2 minutes more. He's good to go tonight. He's probably my favorite play from the Houston side. On the other side, I've got a lot of interest in Karl Anthony Towns. After that, I don't know what to do because I don't know what's going to happen with Malik Beasley back.
Yeah, Beasley's an interesting little wild card, and given what we know about why he was out, we can kind of assume, I guess, that he's going to get a regular run and kind of be where he was previous to this. I don't really expect that it's going to have a dramatic impact. It's not like he was sick with COVID or any of these things we've seen or had a significant injury or anything. He was just out because he's not a really good guy. This does not represent the opinion of Awesemo.com.
Thank you. I should have added that myself.
So I think he's a little bit of a wild card. I like to, especially now that we've got all this ridiculous emergent value, I think we can kind of play it safe. Go with Cat. He's definitely in play from the center spot. Anytime we're getting under 10 grand with Karl Anthony Towns, I think we can get to it. He's a 1.36 fantasy point per minute rate this year, down a little bit from his 1.45. That's a FanDuel rate from last year. But, playing into form after having been out with COVID and having all his family tragedies and everything. So I think he's kind of rounded out to more where we expect him to be in recent games. And he's, in that salary tier where it's coming up, but it's not quite Karl Anthony Towns price yet. So I think we take advantage there. You can get to some Beasley if you want to mix in Anthony Edwards, fine, but he's in that awkward 7,600 price range now where there are just similarly priced guys who are better than him, and I don't think we need him that much. On the Houston side of things, there's a lot of value on that team, and I don't know that we need any of it at this point. I would roster some Christian Wood and some John Wall as kind of movable parts on this slate, guys that you can kind of pay up to who are a little bit more reliable in that salary tier. But they're not, I don't think, really go out of my way for, especially Wall is now looking a little bit over-owned, and his optimal lineup rate and everything has come down just based on some of those other guys, the frequency that we're going to get some of those plays. So it's a bit of a question mark now, where Wall was kind of a guy I was not maybe going out of my way for, but willing to get a little bit over the field on. I think I'd be undercutting the field on him at this point.
All right. I see we have JJT in chat says, is this Hoarders the DVD edition? If you look closely behind Terry, you will notice some VHS tapes, some 8-tracks, and some music cassette tapes. You guys probably
record
don't.
albums are on the other side of the room, though.
Yeah, you guys don't know what 2 of those last 3 things are, but trust me, Josh's dad is looking like he has a nice collection of the oldies.
What I really want to get is like an old stock broker, like ticker tape machine that just does DFS scores out of the corner, so I can pull it out on the tape and just sit here reading them off. I think that would be a lot of fun.
All right. I want to say Donnie Boone says his core 5, John Wall, RJ Barrett, Jeremy Grant, Nikhil Alexander-Walker, and Smart. I would say start over. I'd maybe put Wall in your core at that point.
I think all those other guys were guys that, and Wall's a guy I just finished saying up, I like him a lot less than I did earlier. But yeah, I think Barrett, kind of out of play at that price. We talked about him, and yeah, a lot of those other guys became less relevant than they were earlier. So that sounds like one that just might have started earlier and needs a restart.
All right, James Monahan. James Monahan would like me to know this isn't the slate for reading BS YouTube comments. Yeah, it is. Because it's my choice. So there we go.
We're not you're talking about baseball or something on a day.
We could. I got to figure out how to set my lineup this week in our league, Terry. Dynasty, multi-level dynasty league. So there we go. Someone was saying they're not as much of a fan of Westbrook when Bradley Beal is in. The Wizards are about to fall out of contention for the play-in tournament. That's how bad they are right now. It's to the point where they just put a big stamp on this if they don't win 3 of their next 5 games. It's been a horrible season. So here's what you need to know. 8 more rebounds and Russell Westbrook would be averaging a triple-double this season. He's that close. He leads the league with 14 triple-doubles. His 29 double-doubles are 5th most. Everybody above him on that double-double list has played at least 8 more games than he has. To get ahead of him. He's been absolutely phenomenal. He has 7th highest usage in the league and has been better from a fantasy perspective than Bradley Beal. You can absolutely play him. Price doesn't matter tonight. He's probably one of the safer plays heading into this. So do not lose sight of him. Let's move on to our next round of games here. And the other good thing to know is we'll talk more about Milwaukee when we get that starting lineup. We're still waiting on some of the news, so we're trying to kick the can here just a little bit. So Chicago at Sacramento, by kicking the can, we now know that Zach LaVine is in. Daniel Tice is out. He is not with the team pending a trade, or I don't remember if he's out for personal reasons. Basically, he's pissed that he's going to Chicago and he's no longer in Boston. So this one, we don't have Lonnie Walker. He's going to miss at least the next 10 days. Keita Bates-Diop still out, but we do have Troy Brown Jr. available, Javonte Green available, Al-Farouq Aminu available, and Nikola Vucevic available. Vooch, LaVine, and maybe Kobe White. What else? And I'll go with Addy Daddy. What else do you like from this one?
What else?
The Bulls side.
After you took 4 guys,
well, then take us through the Spurs, baby. We have a very sad DeMar DeRozan who didn't get traded. What else do we have?
Let me pull this one up. I was updating the other sheet there. Chicago, San Antonio, and there they are. So I think Vooch is probably one of my more relevant guys. A little bit more so on the DK side of things, and I think he does potentially take a little bit away from LaVine. So I'm very curious to see how this one plays out in terms of how those guys are going to play together. I think on the offensive side of things, they're going to be interesting. They're going to be pretty dynamite to watch. I don't think this team can play any defense. So I think the San Antonio side could, light them up to the degree that these players are able to. It's just not a team filled with star kind of players now that no LaMarcus Aldridge. So I don't know. There's not a ton that I love. I was getting to a good amount of Keldon earlier in the day, but the blooms kind of come off of him based on all these changes. He was at 53 on FanDuel, 55 on DK. He was a relevant piece, but now he's kind of irrelevant. Derek White is another guy who was coming up a decent amount. He should still be a mix-in option, of course. And Keldon as well. I shouldn't say irrelevant about him, but he's come down from somewhere in the high mid-teens to under 10% on FanDuel and under 5% on DK in terms of our optimal lineup rate metric. I just don't love it with basically any piece of this game. I think maybe LaVine on FanDuel, if you're willing to take the risk of what might come off the top for him in terms of usage and production with Vooch in the lineup. And then Vooch at the center spot, I think you can squeeze something out of. Both of those players are going under-owned on both sites. I think it's about going to the obvious names in this one, and that would be the 2 guys. But again, they're just kind of mix and match pieces for me.
All right, I'm going to make you a deal, chat. Almost 2,500 people watching. Get us to 650, and I will give you 2 ownership updates of the top 5. The deal between now and then, I can do as many reads as I want. So the faster you get us to 650 likes, the less reads you're going to have to hear. Hey, it's baseball season. MLB opening day is April 1st, and we have a deal for you. Get your first 9 days of Awesemo MLB for only $9 using the promo code STARTING9. That's STARTING9 with the numeral 9. This gives you access to everything that we offer for DFS, including player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, lineup builder, and our premium Slack channel. This offer is valid through April 9th. Stop guessing. Start winning. Awesemo. There you go. Get us in there. Get us 650 likes. We also have free projections today for NHL and all of NBA. Terry, we're moving on to our next round of games here. Oh, News God says that we have Gibson starting tonight. Is that Taj Gibson?
I don't know that moves the needle for
No.
me. Not one I want to consider. I'm sure he's probably min-priced as well, so throw another min-priced guy on the board. But yeah, not somebody I'm going to go out of my way for in any way, shape, or form.
Watch you. Let's see. Some people like to read, some people hate to read. There you go. Dallas at New Orleans. We saw this one last night. JJ Redick.
Silky smooth read. Come on.
It was good. That, by the way, it's the
Really
first time
good.
I looked at it. So that was a cold read as well.
Yeah,
I've done this
solid.
before. So here we go. We got Dallas at New Orleans once again. JJ Redick, no revenge for him. Potential revenge for James Johnson, who is available to play for his new team, the Pelicans. Do you think he'll remember he played for the Mavericks? I certainly hope so, but I think he's now up to 11 teams. I wanted to go double check that today, but that's for another time. So Kristaps Porzingis is doubtful with the knee injury. I'm expecting him to be out. Willie Cauley-Stein is still out in the health and safety protocol. Luka Doncic missed last night's game with a sore back. We have seen that flare up a couple times since the All-Star break. It makes me a little concerning, but we have plenty of time to pivot away from him. Plus, as a bonus, we have De'Aaron Fox and several other games. And Paul George, and there's a variety of ways we can maneuver. So I'm not taking him out of our player pool just yet. Lonzo Ball is doubtful. I expect him to miss. I think this will be his fourth game in a row. And Jackson Hayes is now questionable. To start today, I like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think Eric Bledsoe is going to get lost in the shuffle as a pivot play. 4,400 on DK, 4,500 on FanDuel, and $11 on Yahoo, if I remember correctly. What do you like from the Pellies and the Mavs?
Yeah, I was on that Bledsoe pivot earlier in the day. I liked him a little bit better than the Alexander Walker play. Does a little bit more on the court just in general. I know he's had a terrible year, but he was getting less ownership, still a little over-owned earlier, but now it's just kind of, crashed to the floor. So I think he's kind of still relevant as a guy who's going to be out there playing the same amount. Like, he only changed in relation to everything else DFS-wise. His opportunity on the court didn't change. So it's just about those emergent values we had at other spots. So I think if you were going to play him, it's still a fine play, but he's just come down so much on our DFS board that there's no real reason to go out of your way for him now. No real reason to set up the direct pivots to him now. Take what you get of him. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is still actually getting over-owned. And I think it's just because he was so buzzy earlier in the day. But now he's in that 5,300 range that we talked about earlier, where with all the min price type guys, I don't know how much we need to get to him. We're going to be wanting to go superstars and scrubsy on this one. And I don't know how relevant he is. 5,300 as a shooting guard on FanDuel has him coming up about 15% optimal, but getting over-owned to that mark. 14% over on DK. You get him as a point guard and a shooting guard over there. But again, over-owned. I think some of those spots, too, are going to just be occupied by the value so frequently that it's going to squeeze him out a lot. He's been really productive, especially in this little stretch where he's been starting the last 3 games for Lonzo Ball. Took something like 40-some-odd% of their 3-pointers over that stretch, hit 37% of them. It was like 20 for 42 overall from the field. He's around a fantasy point per minute producer just in all situations for the season, and is a guy who can go off when he gets run. But he's very scoring dependent. Alexander Walker is. So it's sub 15% assist and rebounding shares. So just not a guy I love getting to. I really hope Luka plays. I really hope Luka doesn't have a ongoing chronic back type issue. We've seen that derail careers in the past. Hopefully it's just a passing thing. But it's always a concern when guys have back issues. So hopefully he's all right. Hopefully he's out there today. If he is, I want to get to him. I think he's one of the prime pay up options, and we've got all the salary in the world to spend. So yeah, give me rosters, assuming he's out there in full go with as much Luka as I can get to. And then some of the Mavs are mix and match type guys without Porzingis out there. You can get to some Josh Richardson. You can get to some Maxi Kleber if you wanted to, but they're not really popping off the board as go out of my way for guys. They're all in kind of that mid-range of salary as well.
You said chronic and passing in the same sentence, Terry. I just want to point that out.
I said, I hope it's not chronic. I hope it is passing. Oh,
I know. There we go. All right. We've got a couple starting lineups, but I do want to let I'm a Tulsa dog know that I am proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. I would gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. All right. Let's look at some starting lineups here now that YouTube's going to flag this program to show for that little trip down lyric lane. Where did my thing go? Okay, so the Knicks officially are starting Elfrid Payton, Alec Burks, RJ Barrett, Taj, and Robinson. The Wolves are starting Beasley, who again has been out the last 12 games, but that shouldn't impact anything for him. Rubio, Anthony Edwards, McDaniels, and Towns. So nothing really exciting in any of those. Jackson Hayes is still a game time decision with the wrist injury.
Yeah, nothing really exciting in that news. Just ugly. That's going to be an ugly game in general. It might be a bonanza for DFS, but that Knicks Bucks game is just going to be atrocious. And I'm probably going to be watching it.
Oh, yeah. Boston at OKC. That is our last of our 9 o'clock games. So we have just everybody's out. Anybody of relevance for the Thunder is out tonight. For Boston, no Kemba Walker resting on the back-to-back. Evan Fournier not ready to make his debut. Semi Ojeleye still out with, I think he hurt his midsection. Tristan Thompson still in the protocol. Romeo Langford still in the protocol. So nothing really changing there. How do you feel about Tatum and Brown tonight? Against they're still only 6.5 point favorites. I thought that would go up more when we consider there's no SGA, no Al Horford, no Darius Baisley, Tony Bradley not ready to make his debut. Austin Rivers is just like, really? I go from a bad team to a worse team. What the hell? Don't you know who my dad is? What do you want to do with the stars on the Boston side? They feel like they could be not quite stars-y enough, which would make them differentiation plays. And when the hell have we had guys in this situation be a differentiation play before?
Yeah, I think it's a good spot. I think we were talking a lot about Robert Williams earlier in the day, and he's super interesting still. He's getting a little bit over-owned on FanDuel in terms of our leverage score, but I think it's one that we can ignore given the fact that he's got a 67.8% boom score probability as of our last update on a pretty nice projection, just at a very low salary for such a fantasy point per minute monster. He's 1,000 more on DK, which takes him lower down the board, but I think he's still relevant. But going to the guys that you actually asked about, I think Tatum is very, very much in play. Coming up in nearly 40% of the optimal lineups, just one of the better plays from the power forward spot on FanDuel, particularly since we lost a few of the upside guys. So I think we can get to a lot of Tatum. And I think Jaylen Brown's there. He's not nearly as high up the board as Tatum on either site. But given the fact that we're going to have money to spend, I think we're going to be able to get to him alongside a lot of the other guys that are normally stars that would price out playing him, or you would play him and another guy at his tier, but not the star guy. So I think we're going to be able to use Jaylen Brown in interesting ways today. So that's going to keep him relevant for me. On DK, I think Tatum is especially interesting because right now we've got him with a positive 5.5 leverage score. One of the better plays on the DK slate in terms of guys that you can pay up to.
Question, which is an interesting one. Holmes or Towns? Considering with Holmes, he's not going to have the temptation to get into foul trouble, at least not with Jarrett Allen tonight. Clearly, there is a discount. Price really doesn't matter tonight. I really like Holmes, but I'm still going to go with Karl Anthony Towns. I will say when you stick around for our SuperDraft show after lock for the main slate until we go to 8:30, you will hear all about Holmes because he is one of the guys I'm really excited to play tonight on SuperDraft. Holmes or Cat plus whatever you can get for the upgrade if you were to go to Holmes.
Do we have a site on that?
We do not.
We do not.
Let's call it DraftKings.
Let's call it DraftKings. What the hell? Why not? Let me sort to those guys. And looks like sorting by the optimal lineup appearance rate, which is usually the way I do my board here. Karl Anthony Towns, among all the power forward center eligible guys, is the very top of the board, 22.6% of the time coming up in our optimal. He's owned a little bit more than that, but just one of the prime plays to pay up for and stands above like the rest of the field in terms of just how frequently optimal he's going to be. You've got Mamadi Diakite. I think I said that right. Not fast enough, probably, but I think
I'm not going to try to say that name, but there we go.
Yeah, Diakite, probably something along those lines. He's dead minimum priced, and I think just kind of builds in as a pretty interesting option, just like go Towns and Diakite together and then just build out the rest of your lineup. And he's coming up under-owned as an extreme value play so far. That might change as we hit lock, but he's one of those guys that nobody's ever heard of, so I don't know how frequently the general public is going to get there. So just between the two of them alone, I've already forgotten who we're comparing Karl Anthony Towns to.
That would be Holmes.
Rashawn Holmes, who is far down the board. It looks like he is coming up about 3% of the time in the optimal lineup, which ranks him about 15th as we sort that position. So strongly in favor of Karl Anthony Towns, and a number of guys are above him on the board that we can roster in that spot on DK.
All right, Bucks starting lineup is going to be Sam Merrill, Alex Dupain, Nwora, Thanos Antetokounmpo, Robin Lopez. Brooke Lopez. Sorry.
I hope. All right.
Well, because the next one I'm going to say is the Washington Wizards, who I was surprised are not starting Robin Lopez. They are going back to Alex Len, Beal, Abdia, Hachimura, Westbrook for the Wizards. So I'm a little surprised we have one Lopez starting and one not. Well, that's not the surprising news. It's not the combination I thought, though. I still don't want to play Robin Lopez tonight or Brooke Lopez tonight. There will be no Lopi in my mix. This shouldn't change anything for you with regards to so Luke is out. All right. Let's get to the likes, because now you're really going to want the ownership, because they're going to be recalculating it now. We got about 150 to go. I am now, just to celebrate that early, going to put in 10 lineups on DK in the $1 price range. Username EMac. Go knock yourself out on those. We're going to take a moment just to recalibrate here. Terry's furiously changing a few of the things on his spreadsheet, and I'm going to remind you that we do have a SuperDraft show tonight from 8:01 until 8:30. Their slate is going to be a 6-gamer, and it should be fun. We have free projections for them. You'll definitely want to check that out with the unique multiplier series scoring strategy. If you have not made a deposit there, use the promo code Awesemo21. That's Awesemo21, and you will get a deposit match up to your first $50. Terry, do you want to go through the 10 o'clock games and let the dust settle, or do you want to talk Luka now? What do you think? Because we got Kawhi Leonard questionable. I got that one out there too, just for you.
I appreciate that. I actually really like Paul George. I like him either way. I think he's going to be slate relevant, especially, again, just given money to spend. He's in a price tier that just got something popped up. He's in a price tier that renders him, relatively interesting. And one of those guys, kind of like what I said about Jaylen Brown, where I think we're in an exceptional situation tonight where we're going to be able to roster him in configurations that we normally wouldn't be able to get to necessarily. So I really like Paul George. And if Kawhi comes out, then I definitely think Paul George is very much just lock and load kind of a play. I think he's he explodes up the board.
Christian Wood scratched. Kristaps Porzingis out. The hits just keep on coming.
Oh, so baseball.
Wait,
what do you like for
that's starting 9, bro. Starting 9 with Awesemo gets you the first 9 days of all Awesemo premium content for just $9. That will take you from April 1st up through April 9th. You know what they don't do in baseball is late minute scratches. Yes, we have to worry about the weather, but at least we have the gentleman's agreement that most starting lineups are released 2.5 to 3 hours before the game, with occasional changes for warm-up twinges or tripping while shagging flies. Nothing. This was supposed to happen on Sunday night. There's only 3 games tomorrow night. We will have live before lock for that. We also have the NCAA tournament going on right now. We've got betting content. We have within our channels and behind the paywall. We will have a show tomorrow morning with Ben Raza and with Matt Kajeski, checking all of that out. Has anybody else been ruled out between now and when I started that? Remember, you guys got to get to 650 likes, because I still have room to do the reads. You're at 475 right now. You guys aren't even close yet to getting the projections for ownership.
I literally cannot update this fast enough. Every time I update something, it changes again before I get to the next thing. This is...
Oh, dear DK, can you withdraw me from all of my... Because I don't want to punt this to the 8:30 games. One, we're on air up until 8:30, and two, there's so much good stuff here.
Yeah, you just can't on this one, given what's in those early games. That is tough. What does the Wood news do for you in terms of John Wall?
God, nothing.
No?
It doesn't move the needle. I still want John Wall in a ton of lineups. I think he's one of the 7 best plays tonight. I think he's a core option.
Okay, so
for sure.
Yeah, for me, it took him from having slid down the board a little bit to, I think, back to extreme relevance. I think just he's just going to take all the shots. Like,
yeah. So here's the key thing. Yeah. So I said, Houston's projected for, this was before some other changes, but Houston was projected for 112 point total for tonight, which is a mark they've surpassed only once in their last 10 games. No Victor Oladipo. He's in Miami. Daniel House is out for personal reasons. These two teams played back-to-back last night. Earlier this week, Wall played 36 and 36 minutes on consecutive days. Prior to that, he missed the 5 games coming out of the All-Star break. Looks like he is good to go. What you need to know is that when Oladipo is off the court, Wall's averaging 1.1 Yahoo fantasy points per game. This is the relevant stat. Last night, he only had 14 points. He did have 15 assists. He took 25 shot attempts. Does he get to 30 without Christian Wood on the floor tonight? That's the real question. I'll set it at 28.5. Do you want the over or under for shot attempts on John Wall?
I like that. I like that number. I'll go slightly over. What the hell? But yeah, I think that's so in play, especially given who he's just going to be out there with. Like we've seen John Wall be I don't want to use the word selfish, but certainly willing shooter. We'll call it. And so I think we could definitely get that version of him here. So I think it puts him back in play more than what I was saying for him a little while ago, 3 lifetimes ago in terms of this slate.
All right, we're at 514 likes. They're running ownership right now furiously. I can hear the little hamsters running on the wheels back there. We had to bring in a whole another herd for tonight, but get us up to I'll cut you a deal. Get us up to 600, and I'll give you the top 3. You guys you don't feel the gumption to get to 650, and I got time to do more reads here. So, this is all up to you guys, but starting 9 is the promo code for Awesemo Premium Baseball.
So I think it's important that we talk real quick about what we're doing for people as far as salary on Fantasy Cruncher, because there are just so many combinations here that are going to open up without spending the maximum salary.
So I never set a minimum of mine.
Okay.
On that. So I think
that's a good idea.
We may, because that if you try to set like 48,000 as your minimum tonight, that's going to be a disaster. I will accept lineups tonight that are 2,500 shy. I won't. I'll sort it and look if it's weird, but it's all going to come out in the wash based on projected points. But if you're someone that forces that minimum or that salary floor up at a high number, get rid of that tonight. It's not worth it.
Yeah. I just dropped the newest, and just it doesn't have the leverage or the ownership or anything in it yet because the guys are just scrambling to update that as quickly as possible. But just looking at like some of these boom score probabilities on the latest update, you've got multiple guys now in the 80s on FanDuel, multiple guys now in the 90s and high 70s on DraftKings, and all of these guys combine at ridiculous low salaries. So yeah, we want to use those guys in various combinations with one another and then start rostering a ton of stars. But we've got a ton of the guys in like that mid-range tier that we've talked about, the 5,000s, the 7s, and the 8,000s that are coming up with great boom scores, and I'm sure they'll come up frequently optimal as well. That there's just upside and there's just interesting combinations all over the place. So you want to leave yourself a little bit of room for these things to come together. You do want the bulk of your lineup still spending as much salary as possible, but the way that the slate comes together tonight, it's very difficult to make a good lineup that does spend all your salary. It's really a very weird slate.
My brain is broken now. So we had a $25 super chat from Anthony Davis. Thank you. We appreciate that. His question is, how many minutes for Saban Lee now that he is starting? The Pistons are starting Saban Lee, Wayne Ellington, Sadiq Bey, Jeremy Grant, and Plumlee tonight.
Okay. I mean, we could probably count on him for something in the
27.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was thinking like the 24 to 26 range just to be a little safe. It's just a guy I don't really want to guess at, and I don't think we need to. He fits in. He mixes in well at his price. He's a ridiculously low price. Min salary on FanDuel, another min salary guy, 3,200 on DraftKings, and has been productive when he's been out there. I just think with some of these other spots that we know these guys are getting a handful of minutes, there's just more bodies in Detroit than there are with like Milwaukee. So I think he's in play as a pivot point at that min price, but it's tough to guess at what the minutes are going to be.
All right. You guys need another 50 likes or I'm going to do another read. You'll get the free ownership here. Let's look at our last couple games here. Here we go. Here's a good question. Roberts Williams or Moses Brown on FanDuel, the blue site. For those of you in chat, Time Lord is the nickname of Robert Brown, the Celtics center. Took me forever to understand that one. He missed his first 3 press conferences after he was drafted or something like that. So they said he was the Time Lord. I don't know why, but it doesn't make sense to me. But there you go. Time
I
Lord
actually never knew
Brown.
the why. I knew that was him, but I actually didn't know the why behind it. So you just
I had to go look it up because I'm like, what the hell is Time Lord? Is that one of the guys from the Marvel universe? And no, there's that Star Lord or something like that. I haven't gotten that far to that one yet, but
I knew it. Oh, that's a good one. I knew it wasn't Marvel. I thought maybe it was like a Doctor Who reference or something.
Oh,
Never been a Doctor Who guy. I'm just jumping into some Fantasy Cruncher here to take a look. As far as that question goes, I think I would still come down on the Robert Williams side of things, but they've gotten closer, obviously, than they were with the Horford news. So, yeah, I don't think he'd necessarily be setting a foot wrong by going to Brown. And I think they're just guys that you can swap back and forth if you're building 150 lineups. Play a good amount of both of them because they're both very strong plays.
Melissa would like to know if they're going to play Boban tonight. I don't know. Boban, he just keeps getting older, and the NBA keeps getting harder.
The last thing this slate needs is
it's a fair question.
Boban and Taco starting.
You and I don't bring those guys up, even because normally it's just it's not worth it. It might actually be worth it against New Orleans because they do have a pretty big front court with Adams and Zion. So
it's not the craziest thought in the world. I hadn't thought of it, and I didn't, I wouldn't want to bring it up, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of the spot that they could potentially go to him. He can be a point per minute monster. A lot of the time he's just getting beat to death with a book, though, by a guy named John Wick. So
that's right.
Unless we had significant news on Boban, I wouldn't worry about it.
No, and we had another good question here. Let me see. Do we see Boban? Connaughton not listed as a starter. Am I concerned? No, I'm actually not. He's the one guy if Dante DiVincenzo, who is out, were active but not starting, I would think he's probably not going to play. Connaughton's a guy, he's deep enough in the rotation and the reserves. I would have no concerns playing him tonight. We're still waiting on our next ownership update, but you guys still aren't quite at 600 yet. Jump on in and get us to 600 likes. We are staying until 8:30 tonight because we're going to talk about SuperDraft. That's superdraft.io on your computer, or you can go to any app store and download the SuperDraft app. Use the promo code Awesemo21, that's Awesemo21, and then we'll match you up to your first $50 with your first deposit. Philadelphia at the Lakers. Embiid out. George Hill not ready to play, still dealing with that thumb injury. Serge Ibaka still out with his sore back. Marcus Morris missed the last game. He is questionable with a calf injury. Kawhi Leonard missed the last game with a foot injury. We've kind of thought it might have been rest, but apparently it was really a foot injury. And then Pat Beverly still out. The guy I like the most in this one is going to be Paul George. My second favorite is going to be Tobias Revenge Harris, or is that Remember Me? I forget. And then third is going to be, I don't know, Ben Simmons maybe? What do you like here? What do you not like? It's kind of top-heavy team here, in my opinion, with all the other better value elsewhere.
Yeah, very much so. But this is one of the games where, there are at least some star caliber players left on the floor. So I definitely think we can go here. And like I said before, I like Paul George already. Just full stop. And I think if we get him without Kawhi, I think he becomes even more interesting. So definitely fire up the Paul George side of things. Let me just sort to this game. I was updating we did get the most recent, or maybe it's like 3 versions back at this point, but something populated in there for ownership and optimal rates. So yeah, you basically name the 4 players off the top who are going to be relevant. Like I don't think we get very much out of Dwight Howard. Zubac was more relevant earlier in the day a little bit, but I think he's come down the board based on some of those other value centers like Moses Brown, who popped up. So I think most of those guys are just kind of mix-ins. After those two, in terms of like your Marcus Morrises, your Nick Batums, your Danny Greens, your Shake Miltons, I don't think we need any of those guys. If you got them in 1 or 2 lineups, fine, but they're just pieces on the board that don't really matter based on we've got all this value over here and we've got all these stars over here. Those guys in the middle are just going to get mixed out in the wash. Some Ben Simmons for sure, some Tobias Harris. I would actually put it in that order. I like Simmons a little bit better on both sites than I like Harris. You're getting a drop more of leverage, drop more optimal lineup rate from them on both sites, but they're both in play and they're both ways that we can actually spend our salary.
All right. I'm going to give the ownership because I'm sure you guys are going to get us to the next 11 likes that we have asked for. And we're running out of time, and I'd like to crunch some lineups here. So you didn't get there quite, so I'm just going to give you the top 3. Them's the rules.
Sure.
I make them. It's not Spags. Number 1 on DK, Sam Merrill, 64. Thanasis Antetokounmpo, 45. Bryn Forbes, 44. There you go. By the way, the next 3 are also Bucks. On FanDuel, we have Sam Merrill at 41, Jason Tatum at 35, Thanasis Antetokounmpo 33, Pat Connaughton at 30. Zion Williams is the first non-Buck. Over on Yahoo, it's Merrill, Connaughton, Robert Williams is the first guy in who is not a Buck, and then we finish it out with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jason Tatum, and John Wall before we get to our next Buck, Thanasis Antetokounmpo.
There we go. I like it.
Do you want to play Kelly Olynyk? I don't, unless I know he's starting.
Yeah, I don't think that's somebody that, like, with all the different names that we've gone through with all the extreme values and everything, and then wanting to just fill out the rest of the roster with stars, I don't see how he becomes very relevant. I don't think I got to any of them. I'm just checking this. I just crunched 500 lineups with Alex's most recent update. Got to go back to that center question, actually, real quick. 31% Robert Williams, 23% Moses Brown, with Karl Anthony Towns in the middle on FanDuel on that last crunch. That's with some randomness on it, but with Alex's projections. It looks like overall Jordan Nwora, Sam.
Sorry, I'm wrong. So Kelly Olynyk is starting. I missed that one. My apologies.
Still don't think I got to him.
I'm not. I will switch the. Would you go Kelly Olynyk or would you go Rui Hachimura? Established player or guy making his appearance with his new team for the first time? I'd go Rui in this one. So
yeah,
I guess
I'd
don't
rather
like
go Rui.
Kelly.
Yeah. When in doubt, just try not to have to play the guy where you're guessing. Right, go to the established situation, somewhat established player, and go with that. And Olynyk, he's all right. He's had some upside games for us, but a 0.89 fantasy point per minute producer. Oh, I see. He's 3,500 on DraftKings. That's why. Yeah, Cubs just pointed that out.
Sorry, good one.
Thanks, Cubs. 3,500 on DraftKings.
Let's compare him to the Bucks. It's not like they play a lot with the guys that are going to be on the court with them, so that's a fair comparison. We know Kelly Olynyk, there's going to be some rebounding, there's going to be some shot attempts, and there's going to be DGAF in the house. That's Kelly Olynyk's specialty. Yeah, I wouldn't play him in cash.
Some of those counting stats and
I wouldn't play him in cash, but I do think that he would amongst the 4 or 5 bucks we're looking at, Olynyk would probably rank in second for me, or probably third for me amongst those 5 bucks I'm considering in tournaments. And again, I'm capping my tournaments at 3.
Yeah, and I just pulled the DK board back up for the latest update, and it does look like he jumped up the board pretty significantly. I guess it was after we got that Christian Wood news. We just didn't, or I didn't think of it.
Yeah, sorry guys, this is. I was not expecting this tonight. Maybe half of this. So here we are. We're in it together, my friends. We're in it together.
Seriously. So yeah, in the last update that I populated in my spreadsheet here, I see what happened. We didn't have the optimal rate populated. I was sorted by that, but he does have a 43% boom score probability now, which is going to thrust him into relevance. 26 DraftKings point raw point projection for the min price. Yeah, that's already probably right around where you need his ceiling to be on this slate. So I think you can definitely get to Kelly Olynyk as a pivot now. I think it's still a little bit of a question mark how he meshes, what they're going to do with him, and all of that, but based on what we've gotten, what we know about it, I think you can go to him. Min price is interesting.
All right. I am going very, very heavy on Paul George and De'Aaron Fox. We didn't mention De'Aaron Fox, but he has been absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to quickly throw out some stats here for him just because that's how important I think he is. Let's see. He, over his last 10 games, he's averaging 37 minutes, 21.1 field goal attempts. He is averaging 31 points, 4.3 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 combined blocks and steals for just shy of 50 fantasy points. Do not sleep on him tonight. Don't worry that they've got some new people there. This is going to be the hurrah for the Kings to attempt to stay relevant enough for the play-in tournament. This is a winnable game. I really like De'Aaron Fox. The rest of the players in the game, yeah.
Yeah, I like getting
not so much for a hammer. I'm now going to scramble on lineups if you would like to.
Please
entertain.
By all means, I'm taking it nice and easy here. I was not playing a full slate, and I wiped out what I was going to play just because I gave up on updating my own model. I've just been trying to keep the dashboard here up to date so I can talk through some of this stuff. I think you're on point there with Fox. I definitely like him. 1.20 fantasy points per minute producer over the year, up to 9,400 on FanDuel. He's priced appropriately now. We had seen him kind of slip in price, but I think he got my letter about needing to increase his value on Top Shot. So he's been playing a lot better lately, and I think he's coming through for us in that regard. So I think we can definitely get to him. I like the idea that he provides a little bit of flexibility to it for us as well, with just God knows what's going to happen with news coming into that late night game. So we'll see what happens there. Larry Nance is a little bit interesting. Was playing alongside Jared Allen for the most part last night, and got some of a couple backup center minutes. So I think he could be somewhat interesting, but we also saw them mix in Dean Wade in the backup center role. And then when things got out of hand, they went to Lamar Stevens. But if they're using Nance a little bit more in that role, he becomes more interesting there. Is Jared Allen not playing? Did I miss that?
He's not playing.
He's not playing. Okay, so yeah, Nance is going to be relevant, and forget what I said about the backup part of it. That's why Nance is going to be even more relevant. So yeah, he had a decent output last night, 6,500. I think we can go to Larry Nance there, and he's not getting owned to where he should be. He's about half as owned as he should be on both sides. So definitely can go to that. Sexton is a guy who's generally on the board, but not really popping in terms of some of Alex's numbers. Just finds himself kind of in that awkward middle place of salary today. But I think if you're looking for a guy, if you've got that specific amount of money to spend, he's under 10% owned, and there is some upside there. So I don't mind going to Sexton here in what's kind of a revolving door defense game. I don't think we really have to worry about it. Halliburton somewhat in play. We talked about Sean Holmes already, so those guys are on the board. Nobody else really jumping off the page here. I wouldn't totally begrudge somebody going to Buddy Hield if they wanted to, but I think his prices are, more than appropriate for who he is, probably a little high for who he is in terms of my opinion of him. 0.83 fantasy point per minute producer for the year. 6,400 is a little bit much to ask, and more expensive on DK. So if you wanted a couple shares of him, fine. He's projected for 35 minutes, but I just don't think we need him. I think there are better spots to go to.
All right. I'm crunching and downloading as we speak. Here go the downloads.
What do you think?
And we shall see. I set everybody 10% less than what they are on the Milwaukee Bucks. I did allow it to go 3 per lineup because these are just such delicious lineups. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they just look too good. I mean, it might be the siren song of the Milwaukee Bucks right now, just luring us into the crash us on the rocks with a 60-point overall game. But yeah, hopefully it isn't that, and hopefully they deliver something. It is just going to come down to bullseyeing the right combination of those Bucks, though. Is it Mora and Sam Merrill? Is it Thanasis? Where do we go, and what do we do with them? It's going to be the key inflection point for the entire slate. Everything swings on what those Bucks do.
All right. It's safe. Fingers crossed. This uploads. Where's my upload tab?
I think you can get there. You got like 30 seconds.
Oh, I made it.
Seconds. How much Jalen Brunson did you end up with after the?
I capped it at like 30%, I believe.
Okay, FanDuel wise, I would have been right around that.
I capped him at 40, and I got 40.
With no cap on FanDuel, I got to 36% across 500 lineups. So I probably would have been around that mark. Might have come up a little bit when I actually crunched it out. I'm also get it perfect. My Senor Bubbles in Jersey City. You guys are awesome. Not only do you make my laundry smell really good, but your guy was smart enough to leave it outside my door when I didn't pick up the phone just now because I can't get off the air right now. So rock and roll. Senor Bubbles, if you live in Jersey City, send them your laundry. Free plug.
All right, there was some overlay there, but I couldn't get in. But now we've got another slate. We've got SuperDraft. That's superdraft.io. We're going for another 30 minutes here. Hit that like button. Let's hear it for Terry and your old pal EMac for sticking around here. We currently have on their, 8:30 slate. We have 6 games. We have 3 projections tonight for SuperDraft. I'm going to drop those in because they are free projections for all NBA sites. We also have free NHL projections if you want to play around with those a little bit later. On SuperDraft, it is unique. They have a scoring system that is on steroids. It takes the best from FanDuel, it takes the best from DraftKings, and it puts those together. Then it adds a multiplier on top of it. There are no salary restrictions, so say hello to lineup freedom. Is that a Tinder saying? Oh, no, it's a SuperDraft saying, and it's part of their plug. I don't think that would work on Tinder too well, but who knows? Who knows? Say hello to
Depends on your
blank
relationship.
freedom. I don't know. We'll see. But they have 3 guards, 3 forwards, and a center. They are experimenting a little bit more with some multi-position eligibility. The scoring system is 3-4 blocks and steals, half a point bonus for 3-pointers. You get the double-double and triple-double bonus, -1 for turnovers. This is pinball scoring at its finest. The multiplier, how does that work? Well, right now, Jalen Brunson is our number 1 play of the day on SuperDraft. Why is that? Well, because he has a 1.75 multiplier. That means whatever he scores is multiplied by 1.75. So that has him cresting just over 62 points. THJ, Tim Hardaway Jr., at 60.67. He has a 175 multiplier. Who is the best star coming up? And this will help with the perspective. That would be Jason Tatum. He has a 1.2 multiplier today. That gets him to 58 adjusted points. I'm looking to see, most everybody's got a multiplier here because the super duper stars have either been ruled out for this slate, or Bradley Beal and Westbrook are on the earlier slate. So we have some interesting ones. So Derek White for me was coming in early on today as one of my better guys I was interested in. He has a 1.75 multiplier going against Chicago. He now comes in 12th. I think he was 6th or 5th earlier today, but I think he is a differentiation type play. Let's talk a little bit here about SuperDraft. If you guys have SuperDraft questions, let us know. If we get other lineup questions and information, we will talk about that. We do know that Jackson Hayes is out. We know that Lonzo Ball is out. That's and Malik Beasley is going to play about 25 to 35 minutes tonight. So none of those are surprises, but if we get anything else, or we find out maybe a little bit more, a little hint one way or the other from questionable to probable or questionable to doubtful for Kawhi Leonard, we'll talk about that. But let's talk about SuperDraft. What is I like to build 1 or 2 lineups on this. That's my favorite thing to do. Or I join the nickel, which is you can put in 150 contests, 5 cents each. They do have, they are Fantasy Cruncher and Optimizer friendly. They do have late swap. It can be a little bit tricky at first to figure out how to do that. So don't wait until you're under the time crunch to do that. Start out in the nickel where it only costs you $7.50 to make your mistakes. It's a little easier than when you're playing $100 or $200. Or if you're Rin Pack, just winning the damn thing every other night.
Yeah, that's always a good strategy, right? But yeah, your advice there is something that people ask that a lot on all the different sites, and it's really good advice about just getting started, right? Play something where you can max enter and do it comfortably, where you're not risking a big portion of your bankroll or a big portion of your ability to eat food that week, and play there until you start winning and seeing winning. I don't mean winning twice in 1 week and then all of a sudden you're going to jump to the next level because you're an expert. Winning consistently over time. And then take your next step and do it in small steps, small increments as you build up, and then start, mass entering the biggest, the $15 slates on DK and risking tremendous amounts of your bankroll. But that's how you get started. Build it down. And if you get in over your head in a certain level, don't ever be afraid to take a step back and go back to those quarters, those nickels and everything. It's a good place to either build or rebuild your fundamentals.
We have a good question here. Do you like tonight someone like Mr. Brown, who has a 1.75 multiplier here? I'm going to open a contest so I can build one. Let me see. I tend to lean a little bit more. If I'm building something that's a little more stable, I like to double bonuses, or guys that are basically going to get rebounds and blocks. So that builds your base, in my opinion. And with the multipliers going on top of that, if you can find someone like him who could fall into a double-double, if not more, it's a little bit safer because we are not entirely counting on him to score. I've already mentioned that a lot of these depleted offenses are going to suck. But what isn't going to suck? Rebounds, because while these guys are missing more shots, that means there's more rebounds available. Look to those guys that have that in their tool bag. So for me, I think Brown is a very nice play. Let's put him into the lineup I'm going to build here. That's Moses Brown, 165. That's putting him in at center. Now that is going to cost us our center spot. That's much like FanDuel. This is a major differentiation spot at center. I like going away from what is probably popular. Vucevic on his new team. Time Lord, he's at 1.2. You can get him at forward as well. Gobert is coming in at 1.2. Joe Val going against Gobert is 1.3. And then you got to scroll a bit to find people that are actually playing. The only other guy I'd be interested in addition to Moses Brown, I think, would be Larry Nance Jr., who comes in at a 1.55. He has a little bit more name recognition than Moses Brown does. They're DFS players. They're going to probably go with Moses Brown. If it's anybody else that's just popping in for a moment and not watching all the Awesemo shows or their other favorite sites, there are no favorite sites out there besides Awesemo. But if they're looking at other information sources, they may look towards Larry Nance. I don't think that's a bad play, but you can also play him at forward. So we're not entirely missing out. So how do you feel about Moses Brown? I guess the direct pivot would be Ivica Zubac at 1.65, not going against Joel Embiid tonight.
That was literally the first time I heard Rudy Gobert's name all day today. Throw that out there.
The Stifle Tower, arguably one of the best defensive, or in the midst of one of the best defensive seasons of all time when you look at all of the advanced metric stacks. Yeah. Just is what it is.
Joke. Yeah, he just did not come up and was not really relevant. So if you're looking to play some Rudy Gobert action, maybe that's where you make your scene over on SuperDraft. But in general, I think what you did there with the Mo Brown play is definitely probably the right move to probably like that. I think that is a sharp move. I think we've got a nice multiplier.
Jumbo shrimp. I guess that would be going the other direction. Sure.
Yeah, late-ish breaking news that a lot of people probably got lost in the shuffle as well, just with all these different moving parts on this slate. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And the opportunity cost to not roster Ivica Zubac is whatever. And then you get some of these guys with multi-position eligibility that keep them on board for us. So, I think you're fine making that move with your first.
All right. See somebody else popping out for me right away on this one. So Zion has the lowest multiplier I've ever seen for him. His rookie year, he was perpetually locked at 1.4, 1.45. This year, I think he started out at like 1.55. He's worked his way up. Tonight, he is 1.15. Wow. Hat tip to him because he has definitely earned that increase in the multiplier. So the closer you are to kind of being a superstar, that lower that multiplier is. The people that are thrust into the opportunity for greatness tend to be down in that 1.6, 1.7, or even further down range. Those that are okay players are kind of in the 1.4 range. And then next tier superstars, those that might make all-star games and those that may have a third team NBA or something like that under their belt in the last couple of years, the Paul Georges, the Zach LaVines, they're going to be in that 1.2, 1.25 range. So Paul George is the guy I'm looking at right here. Our pivots. So Time Lord is interesting. Robert Williams at a 1.2. I would have never thought that, but with blocks and him getting multiple blocks in every game. So, well, not every game, but here's his last few games. 27 minutes, 5 blocks, 20 minutes against the Bucks, no blocks, 27 minutes against the Grizzlies, 4 blocks, 27 minutes against the Cavs, 4 blocks, 21 minutes against the Jazz, 2, 19 against the Rockets, 3, 16 minutes against the Nets, 6 blocks. Blocks add up incredibly fast here, and he gets a lot of them. 3 times the blocks times what his multiplier was when it was at 1.5 was just insane scoring. Sometimes they will go ahead and cap some players like this. This looks to be one of them, so I'm a little surprised. I still think he's okay at 1.2, and this is like when you feel this is the feeling of, oh, they're too expensive. I can't spend this on them, Terry. I've been paying $5,500 and now they're $6,800. I can't go there. That's what this is. Well, I've always been getting him at 1.5. I can't go down to 1.2. Or can you against a depleted Thunder squad?
Yeah, for sure. I think you can. I think he's going to be able to do whatever he wants in the paint in terms of the defensive side of things, racking up some of the counting stats. Is just until he proves us wrong in going to him, I think it makes sense to continue going to him. It's definitely a big drop in the multiplier there, and it would be akin to a big salary increase like you're talking about. But the guy's earned it, and he's getting the playing time. He's got the endorsement of the coaching staff. They want to see him succeed in this role. I think they're going to give him every opportunity. I think he's seizing it right now, and I think he's totally relevant for us on the slate here tonight. So yeah, he's in play. Looking at Alex's board, he does rank down the board a little bit. He's not, off of it by any means, but there are some guys that rank out above him after we multiply it out. But I think he is, one of the better plays on the slate and could definitely be a slate breaker if he adds up a couple extra blocks.
All right. Looking at our guards here. So I think the top number one guard for me, when we try to consider what is going to be their popularity, it's going to be De'Aaron Fox at 1.3. Everybody is going to be flocking to Jalen Brunson at 1.75. I'm perfectly fine taking him in all formats for the block, because I don't know if he has 30, 35 fantasy points with that 1.75 multiplier, that's going to have him approaching 60. That's like good outing. So they kind of try to adjust the multiplier so people are going to get in that 50 to 60 range. And that's sort of how they back into it as kind of an adjustment. And that's what happens when you get these guys that are coming into doubling their minutes or their responsibilities, or a key usage guy is out. That's where we want to look to these guys. So for Brunson, it's chalk. It's acceptable chalk. Set last night's poor performance aside, and let's go with him tonight, I think. So Fox and Brunson are my two. I'm going to go with Rashawn Holmes. I mentioned I really liked him. He's got a 1.4 multiplier. What's the biggest issue with him? Seeing him get 2 fouls in his first rotation and wanting to throw your phone against the wall. Let's not do that, but at least he doesn't have to deal with Jarrett Allen, because I believe I had that exact same feeling when they played in Cleveland. What was it, 8 or 10 days ago? I've lost track of days, but like 4 games ago, they played in Cleveland, and Holmes ended up having a very nice night at the end of it, but he had, oh no, I better sit him. He's got 2 or 3 fouls, whatever, which I hate. And how many times has he fouled out this year? Hardly at all, but it limits his playing time, because Luke Walton's a traditionalist. That leaves me with
probably.
Yeah, that leaves me with one more guard spot if we're going with Time Lord. So the question with Time Lord is, do you take Time Lord with the exact same multiplier as Jason Tatum? Ooh.
I mean, they're not projected dramatically differently. It's like a 7-point delta in Alex's projection that I'm looking at here. So if you were thinking about it in terms of like which one of these guys people are going to go to more, if you put that decision side by side for people, they're probably more likely to click on Tatum, even though Williams has all the buzz and all the DFS buzz around them. I still think put them side by side with the same multiplier, people are more likely to click on Tatum. So if we can get somebody interesting in that other spot where we're getting like a big multiplier on an interesting looking projection, then maybe it does make sense to maybe cut the ownership down and go to the Williams play for the same owner for the same multiplier. I think he's got similar overall upside because all he has to do is block a couple extra shots, particularly in the scoring format like what you were talking about. So yeah, I think that's an interesting inflection point for the slate for sure.
Are you ready to have your mind blown? Jason Tatum has shooting guard and small forward eligibility. Therefore, he qualifies at 6 of the 7 positions on SuperDraft. That is going to inflate his popularity dramatically, gamers.
Yes, it is. But it also means you can roster him alongside Robert Williams if you want to. You're not deciding between the two anymore. And I don't think there's anything really wrong with that.
I've got that in. Let's see where I can use my ticket. Oh, I've got to enter one in the dime, or what do they call it? The nickel. In there.
I think Alexander Walker on the SuperDraft slate.
Hang on. I want to make sure I put this in a good contest first.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. I think he's somewhat interesting. He's a guy that we talked about a decent amount for the main slates, for the other sites slates. This is the main slate on SuperDraft. And we talked about him in terms of like he needs to make his shot. He's just somewhat scoring dependent guy. I think with a 1.7 multiplier, one of the higher ones for a guy who's not on the Dallas Mavericks, essentially, as we look down the board, I think he makes a couple of those threes for us. We're going to start racking up points. And I think he probably came out of people's thinking a little bit as some of those Bucks names started to hit the board and people on the other sites started thinking of all those other value plays. Alexander Walker stood out a lot more earlier in the day. People were still on him in like that 15, 18% range as those slates locked out. But I think we're probably going to lose even more of that coming into the SuperDraft slate. So I think at a 1.7 on SuperDraft, he's pretty interesting to me.
So let's kind of think of this a little bit next level. Looking at let me update that. That New Orleans has to be favored by more than 4.5 now, don't they?
I would think so.
at an old number here. Well, why don't I go over to OsmoOddShopper.com? That's where I should have been in the first place. But I was trying to get to a different site that also offers me injury news. So let's go over to OsmoOddShopper.com. Let's go to the point spread, and let's go down. Oop, Alex Baker himself just gave us a premium Slack chat advice. I'm going to give it to you guys because this is a SuperDraft show. He said refresh the projections to get the updated Moses Brown love. So let's see here. What happened 28 seconds ago? The projections were just updated. You guys are going to get these hot off the press. I just dropped the link into the YouTube chat. Let me put that in there again. All of our projections are free tonight. So I go over here to SuperDraft, and Moses Brown is now 1/10 of one SuperDraft point ahead of Jalen Brunson. He is the number one play of the day. There we go. Like angels singing or a car honking in traffic. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, there's that sweet siren song again. Huh?
Oh boy, that's a good one. Well, you guys have this for free. Who knows if anybody else is going to get on over there? But it's nice having our projections do all the heavy lifting to incorporate all of the SuperDraft projections. They also have single game contests over there where they have their champion slot, where the champion gets another 50% multiplier on top of their multiplier, on top of the already robust scoring system. It's think of it this way. It's like playing Madden against your friends when you last play of the game and you got to throw a Hail Mary. You're never out of it when you have a champion with a 50% multiplier on top of an already lofty multiplier, right?
So the normal scoring for SuperDraft is fantasy scoring on steroids. This is like the fantasy scoring on those good Soviet steroids from Rocky IV that Drago was on. Got it.
Kawhi Leonard and Marcus Morris are available for the Clippers tonight.
All right.
What does that do for you? You still like Paul George? Do we still like him on SuperDraft?
That's what I was just going to get to, though. It looks like Kawhi outranks him on the SuperDraft site, which is super interesting. That wasn't the case for me on the other sites because I think Kawhi was just in a different salary tier, still getting a bit of a discount over on those other sites for Paul George. On this site, it's only a 0.05 differential in their multiplier. So I think assuming full health, and foot injuries are weird, but he's going to be out there. I have to assume he's going to be perfectly fine if they're putting him out there in an interesting game against Philly. Yeah, fire up the Kawhi Leonard on SuperDraft. I like it. And he's going to probably not be in a ton of lineups just based on he was questionable all day. And I think a lot of people were expecting him not to go.
And I want to look, let me try to edit my lineups. Again, sometimes these things are a little tricky on SuperDraft, so don't wait until you're in panic mode. But I think changing from Paul George right now to Kawhi Leonard is the way to go. Kawhi's going to have the game time decision. Kawhi's going to project a teensy bit better. We don't have to worry about the salary savings, or we don't get the salary savings. They have the exact same multiplier, but gamers are less likely to go to him just because of all of that, because we've sort of become conditioned from the salary sites that Paul George is a little bit better of a player, even though from a fantasy perspective, even though Kawhi Leonard is arguably the better player.
I think I did call Paul George the second best player on the team in my article today, so I can't argue with you.
Ivica Zubac, huh? I see what you're doing there. All right. Let's see. So I will have some lineup swapping to do at the end. Let's see how much Paul George I did end up with. What game locks at 8:30? Is that the Dallas game? Oh, the Dallas game locks at 9. Okay. Oh, so Chicago, San Antonio is the 8:30 lock. I'm good. I don't have much from that game. So I will be readjusting some of my lineups there, probably to work in some Kawhi Leonard. But let's see how much Paul George I had. Oops, I guess.
Yeah, you would drop your you would be risking your Vooch shares at that, and he's the most relevant play there. Maybe a little Derek White if you had him in some. Jonathan Murray.
I have 40%.
Not much at risk there.
40% Paul George. I feel comfortable cutting that in half and reapportioning it maybe to a couple game stacks, or maybe not game stacks, but a couple lineups that are focused on the Pelicans coming back with some of the Dallas Mavericks, et cetera. Some of the things I was not able to do with the lovingly handcrafted lineups today. I just had to push crunch based on my settings and get everything uploaded, because we saw what happened to me last week when it didn't work out. So we don't want that to happen again. Sure. All right. So here we go. Just a general question. We kind of hit on it. Should we change PG-13 to Kawhi? I don't think you have to. Now, here's the interesting thing. I've been asking Eric Lindquist about this because he's been doing late swap for much longer than I have. He kind of understands the trends. He says he thinks more people are doing it now this year than ever before, partly because we're just having so many changes. People are just inherently by their computers in the middle of a pandemic, and they're able to do this. So that's driving some of it. And then the compressed schedule and just a lot more changes is driving a lot of it. So people are maybe reacting to one piece of news, but that isn't just what they're working on. They're rebalancing their entire set of lineups. So what it's doing is it's changing relatively dramatically the popularity of different players from what we had them projected as of lock, and what probably wouldn't have changed that much under normal circumstances. So where I'm going with this is, if you're playing on a site that or in contest formats or sizes that have a lot of mass multi-entry players and a lot of the more savvy gamers, like the $8 and above on DK, the Slam and those other ones on FanDuel, you're probably going to run into a lot of players that are going to now go to Kawhi. I don't think this overly changes anything, but because so many people are doing it now, you're probably getting another 50% more people reacting or of a reaction. So if Kawhi was going to go from basically 10%, the wait and see folks, and then because he's in, he probably get another 10. This year, we may get him up to 25. That's not his numbers for tonight, but that's just to make the math easy. So if it's already a low-owned player, I don't think everybody's going to fly towards them, but the people that are going to fly towards them are also going to be the ones that have the better lineups that aren't dead. So it might have a bigger weight. That doesn't mean you should not go to them. It shouldn't change our interactions. We just want to understand what the field is going to be like. And the field is different this year because it's the really savvy players that keep rebalancing their portfolio, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going up, basically, to boil that down, you're going to be going up against better competition, where if it's almost an even out play, and it somewhat is on the SuperDraft slate with those guys being at similar multipliers, I think it might, if you stay on the path that you were already on, use Paul George as people jump off of him, you're staying on the same ship that might be more owned, might be slightly less likely, but you're staying on it against weaker overall competition. So like those lineups will all be formatted improperly. Not all, but it's more likely you're going up against like improperly constructed lineups. So that's sharp. That's an interesting way to look at it. I like that. Just to put it in perspective for that one change, in this situation, no Beverly, no Ibaka. With Kawhi on the court, George is a 1.12 FanDuel point per minute guy. And with Leonard off in this situation, he's a 1.20. So there's a little bit of an uptick if Kawhi had been out. But I think 1.12, you're still perfectly fine with Paul George.
All right. Sadly, I did end up with a couple Knicks. I got about 10% of Burks, and I got 10% of Burks and 20% of Barrett.
Okay.
Not the worst, but it's not what I wanted.
Yeah, it's not like they're going to kill you. And Burks is somebody that Tibbs has been raving about lately, and has been covering a lot of those point guard minutes, a lot of the ball distribution minutes, and honestly having a really nice year unexpectedly. So I don't mind that. Somebody's going to have to do something for my next.
Oh, or was that just a partial? I'll have to look and see here. But what do we got? 6 minutes to go here. Checking in with the SuperDraft overlay. Let me open up the other window because sometimes it does not always update when I've got the other one open. So we have 500 spots left in the Super 8 contest. There are 5 minutes left to get into that one. I suspect that one will be probably a reduced rake, which means it's not quite going to fill, but I bet it gets up somewhere to 1,200, 1,300. So it's still going to be about 10% empty. The $4, probably the $18 jump shot has 150 spots left. That'll probably get up to about 930. And then the NBA and one, that is a $2 contest. There are 1,300 spots left in that. That is the 130 max. I suspect that will get up to about 40, maybe 4,000. So that'll have about 10% reduced rake.
I love it. I mean, look, if you can't get full blown overlay where they're paying you to play it, at least if you can get into the discount, that's always a good thing for the bankroll. Love it. Hey, two guys a little bit down the board with some interesting multipliers that probably won't be in a ton of lineups, but should be pretty relevant tonight. Curious which one you like better. Do you like Isaiah Roby at a 1.8 on SuperDraft, or do you like Joe Ingles at a 1.6?
I'm going to go with Joe Ingles because he tends to, one, we're not paying the salary increase that at least DK gave him for Conley being out tonight. He's number 7 all time on the Jazz assist leader list. He is basically the number 2 assist guy since the beginning of last season, both from an assist rate and from a raw assist, a per game average. When you're comparing him and per 36 is what I'm trying to say. When you're normalizing it a little bit from Donovan Mitchell and from Mike Conley. So he is someone that is no stranger to this. He's playing with very familiar people because the Jazz have not had a lot of roster turnover the last couple seasons. And he is someone that I think has a little bit more stability. Roby, whole bunch of new guys tonight, disastrous situation going against the Celtics, who by the, tiny bit shorthanded themselves. That's not really going to matter. They still have the better coach. So Roby, he's going to be battling Mo Brown for the rebounds now, etc. I'd lean towards Ingles. That would just be my lean on that.
Yeah, very much with you. Ingles is the
I can analyze too. You guys think I'm just a host.
Gotta give him, once a season, we've got to give him the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. It's in his contract. EMac kills it on the analysis, please.
So I do all the articles. It gets me prepped for the show, so then I can ask our brilliant analysts that I'm always paired with good questions because they're the guys you guys really want to hear, and I know that. So
there you go. I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, Ingles was the one that jumped out to me when I was looking, and then Roby was like right next to him at that 1.8. So that's why I paired them in the question. But Ingles, I like, and it was all based on that assist uptick. Really think he can rack those up in this situation. So that would have been the play for me as well. Well,
the fifth says 7th. Wow, analyzed. Stockton, here we come. No, I'm pointing out that Stockton's like the all-time leader ever. But 7th for the Jazz, pretty good considering some Hornacek's been there forever. They have a lot of guys that have been there a long time. When you look at that, and when you think he's only been in the league for 6 years, you're like, wait a second. He's
impressive.
7th? Oh, that's interesting. That's the reaction I'm trying to.
Yeah, also, not a point guard, not somebody who immediately leaps to mind for who racks up a lot of assists in Jazz history. Yeah, I think that was a good call by you. Where'd you end up on Zion, by the way, with that 1.15 SuperDraft multiplier? Did you?
I didn't put him in my lineup.
My bust of the day pick yesterday. Ouch.
Oh, wow. I believe Alex did not like him either.
Well, where do you think I got it from? I write that article based on.
Wait, no. So the boss uses his tools? Get out of here.
I hear he designed them and he uses them to make millions of dollars doing this stuff. Huh?
All right.
That was a bumpy one. I was with him, though. It bore out completely in my numbers as well, which I always put side by side with Alex's when I write those. And he was the most popular guy with far and away the highest bust probability yesterday. He just happened to come through. He's been playing great. 1.15, though, I do think is kind of low to ask from him on SuperDraft. I think that is kind of priced up if you want to look at it in terms of that. But that's like 10,000 some odd something Zion, I think.
And I'm answering a few of these in chat because we won't get it there in time. T Green does ask, do we think Vooch gets a 20 and 10 in his debut? I do. Let's also keep in mind Vooch is in his age 30 season, I believe, is this year. And he's averaging like 11 rebounds per game. That's like the lowest, I think, of the last 3 years. If I remember, I'm going off memory here, but I still think he's a solid 2010 candidate every night. And then they were asking Mitchell or Fox. And of course, it's going to be Fox over Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, Utah just didn't come up extremely relevant overall through the day, except for a couple of those pieces from the value side. But Mitchell was mostly unchanged from the news that we got.
Ryan Saul says, come on, guys. You can't be as old as EMac and not know your stuff. I'm not the god. I am a god, only because I've been around forever. Most people aren't going to get that, but Brian Saul,
they know that one.
The Groundhog's Day. Don't worry. Okay. I actually saw that movie in the theater.
Nice. I saw it in the theater. I wonder. I'm not
All
sure.
All right. Hassan Whiteside ruled out. He's probably, I don't expect to see him on back-to-backs, and I knew better when I was picking him up in my weekly NBA league, but he's not playing tonight. I don't think that moves the needle other than to make Rashawn Holmes just that much better of a play. They still have enough other players, plus with Cleveland not having Jared Allen, it's not like that game is likely to be small a lot of the time anyway.
Are we going to get a Michael Carter Williams coming out of the locker room triumphantly, limping onto the court and saving his team when he was already ruled out kind of a play tonight?
With a piece of toilet paper on his shoe?
That was so weird last night with he's out, he's in, he's going to play. At one point, Terrence Ross was coming in heroically and dressing so that they
he had the Trotskys. What can you do? How do you know? Maybe you didn't know.
I wouldn't like,
I don't know if I can go out here, guys.
I'm good, guys. Good luck out there.
Which color uniform are we wearing tonight? Do we have a wheelchair handy?
Oh,
what? Poopy Paul Pierce? Come on.
There you go.
All right. We are at lock. Just so you guys know, we are doing this all over again tomorrow. We are starting at 10 a.m. with the NBA Strategy Show. You're going to get Laffy and Alex. Oh, we haven't had that combination in a while. At 1 o'clock, you're going to get the college basketball live before lock. Ben Raza and Matt Gajeski are weaving their magic once again. Then at 2:30, you get Jason Floyd and either Chris or Phil. One of them will be coming in. This first NASCAR dirt track race in over 50 years. That's going to be exciting to see how that one plays out. And then at 6 o'clock for a 3-game slate, you get the deeper dive, Laffy and Terry. And then you get myself and Eric Lindquist breaking down whatever they don't get to for those 6 teams in the player pool. We got you covered. And there'll probably be news, though not as much news as there was tonight. Final thoughts, Terry, before we get on out of here.
Yeah, hopefully a little bit more tame. 3 games. Maybe it'll only take me like 2 hours to write the deep dive tomorrow before jumping on this show. It should be fun. Deep dive is free all year long, by the way. Get it for bigger slates during the week. And Adam and Laffy write that during the week and do a killer job. It's a premium piece of content in the industry. Totally free all year long. And we got the MLB coming up this week. I'm psyched for MLB. I know I mentioned it a few times during the show, but you're doing the very first piece of content, I think, the overnight slate starter on Wednesday into Thursday, right? And then I'm going to be on the first strategy show, the morning show of the year. And I believe it's me, Laffy, and Alex Baker himself, which should be a pretty fun setup. Psyched about it. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this. I got to remember to go block my day job schedule so I can have fun with the contests. But with that, gamers,
play MLB, Awesemo.com.
Yeah, with that, gamers, good luck.